Oh, hey, did it actually work this time? Okay. I think I'm actually up and going now. Alrighty. So, I know this is a bit of a surprise live stream, but I wanted to throw something together. So, as anybody filters in, let me know if I'm visible and audible. I had to go through a couple hurdles trying to get going. So, I do apologize for that. I'm just going to make a quick post on the community tab and such to hopefully get some guys filtering in. This is a total surprise live stream. So I didn't have anything planned, but I saw I reached the 3,000 subscribers milestone and decided I would throw something together. Hey, System Monitor, just give me a shout if I'm visible and audible on your end. I had some hurdles to get over to get going, so I wanted to make sure I'm actually coming through. So I'm just going to throw up a community post real fast just to I had one up, but it didn't like the first stream I tried. So let me just throw this up really fast so that way. I'm sorry to have to do this once it's already started. I had everything all nice and fixed, and then it just decided it didn't like me. So many apologies. But let me just throw this together really quick. Okay. Course, they don't make this very easy to do when you're just going, "Oh, yeah, I have to redo my live stream from scratch and then hope I can do it fast." Uh, again, many apologies. Almost done. Okay. All right. So that's got that. All right. So how is everybody doing? I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I hit the 3,000 subscribers milestone all of a sudden in the past day, and that really threw me for a loop because I never expected to even get 1,000, let alone 100. So I'm so thankful for all you wonderful people out there, and see we got some people floating in. So as everybody comes in, hello and welcome. Again, this is just a surprise informal live stream because I've hit a subscriber milestone and I'm again very amazed. So I figured it would be fun to. I had a little time to spare this evening, so just figured I'd hang out with you guys and just talk about some film topics and physical media topics. Of course, couldn't. I never can think of what I'm going to throw up behind me, and since I didn't have a topic, I'm like, well, it's June 2023. What are we all thinking? Batman and indie. So I've been preparing myself, and I've got a number of videos I'm working on because I'm trying to do a lot of Batman and indie related videos for. I've always come up with way too many plans for videos, so it's going to be in addition to just the month of June. It's going to be some ongoing features, but I hope to start getting some of those up soon. I am going to do a home video history video on both the original Bat films and the indie trilogy. So I've been wanting to do that for so long, and of course, anytime I can talk about these two laserdiscs in particular and the others in this series, I get all super excited. So that's what I've got in the works, in addition to Blu-ray reviews and book reviews and all kinds of other things. So, in case you were wondering, this is a preview of coming attractions. So, oh, cool, we've got a lot of people coming in. Hello, everybody. Honest Blu-ray, everybody check out his channel, wonderful channel. Shipmeister, hello. Jacobians, hello. Jeff, hello. Garrick, hello. How you doing? Renan's here. Hey, man. Hey, David. Dundee, thanks, guys. I never thought I would hit 3,000, so this is just every subscriber is a pleasant surprise. So thank you all of you guys. VCI surprise stream, yeah. I posted my my review of the VCI Drums of Fu Manchu serial DVD, but I did pick up one or two discs. They had a Memorial Day sale, so I decided to finally try out some of their serial Blu-rays, which are all mostly coming from new scans from Universal. So I've seen some positive reviews, but I've also seen some reviews kind of indicating that there's some tomfoolery going on. So I'm like, fingers crossed. So I just picked one or two to give a whirl. So I will watch through those and hopefully be able to have a review done relatively soon. Of course, it's a serial, so it takes a while to watch all the 12 or more chapters, but I've been wanting to do that. They're up to about like 15 or so, I think, if not a few more. So I decided I would give one or two a try while they were on sale, and so that's I haven't bought much outside of that in terms of physical media releases and a handful of new releases. And just when I think I'm done with LDs, I'm not. So I have a lot more Laserdisc collection videos upcoming. If you were wondering, I've got a massive amount I've been going through. So I've had to break it up into several sections. Let's see. Oh, hey, System Monitor. I'm the one badgering you about the Rambo releases earlier on Twitter. Oh, no problem. Yeah, those are interesting. Again, as I was saying over on Twitter when you asked me, it's the source scans are seemingly good, but they definitely mess with the color timing. But yeah, over on the Blu-ray forum, somebody's been posting that I want to say it's somebody associated with Shout Factory. That there is a new 4K release in the works for the Rambo films, and whether it's this year, end of the year, next year, I don't know, but it's supposed to be addressing some of the issues. Again, my guess is it's Shout Factory, but I'm not 100%, and there's no details. So, take that with a grain of salt, but there is something apparently in the works. Yes, thank you for saying trilogy. Yes, I'm so used to referring to the indie trilogies as such, and I don't think anything's going to change that. So, although I will admit I've been preparing for this for Dial of Destiny, and I'm gonna try and go opening day to our one Dolby theater and see it in Outmost. But I did what I hadn't done in a long time, and I actually sat through all of Crystal Skull for the first time since the midnight premiere back in 2007, when all of us took our fedoras off and placed it over our chests like this. You saw all the fedoras come off within the first 10 minutes. I'd seen bits and pieces over the years. I just kind of tried to put it out of my mind, and I briefed through it another time. And yeah, admittedly, there's a couple of sparks, but our situation has not improved in the years since. That's basically how I looked at it. So I guess it'll just stay a very odd curio for me to decide to take a look at every once in a while. Although, interestingly, if you have the UHD set, they have gone in and for the 4K release, they have redone the color grading. So it's not just HDR, but with a new HDR pass. It doesn't have the same, I don't know how you describe it, the same teal and orange, gross looking color timing that we associate with Crystal Skull that's represented on the Blu-ray. So if you have the UHD and you have the Blu-ray, that color grading has been removed. So it now looks a little better on the UHD, but that also means it's not as accurate to 2007 fads. So I hadn't realized that because I tried to put it out of my mind. So that was interesting. So now I got to talk about potential revisionism in Crystal Skull of all things. I thought it was just the trilogy I had to worry about, but now, even though it's better, they have slightly tweaked even Crystal Skull, which is a strange thought. Some exciting coming attractions from Paramount. Yeah. Um, well, I try not to point the finger at any one particular entity, but Paramount and the Warner Studio label are high on my my list of regular offenders. Let's see. Really appreciate a video on the recent Fleischer Superman cartoons. Help me save my money. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, not going to support that garbage. Yeah, it's. I hated to be so negative, but boy, was that unexpected going into it. And I tried to cover every detail that I thought was important, and then I tried to figure out how to break it all down and try to make it at least a bit more digestible or understandable for people who aren't video nerds. But it's such a shame because the source scan is so much improved, and you can see that underneath all the, as I like to call it, the junk processing, which is the same thing with a lot of Paramount stuff, and the same thing that happened on the Godfather UHD. So that's why most people are not, getting into the nitty gritty, or they're like, what are you talking about? Because again, the source scan was great, and you can get the idea of what it would have been like had they just, left it as is. So I'm glad that I'm still amazed that that video got so much traction. I'm very pleasantly surprised and very amazed. So thank you to everybody who watched and commented on it. That was was very nice because I spent way too much time, admittedly, putting that together. It's kind of sad, but usually the easiest part of making a video is actually sitting down and doing the recording part, because I don't go off of a script, and I just usually have a few notes, like bullet points jotted down on a post-it note beforehand, and then I kind of go from there, because I want to try and keep videos informal and conversational where possible. But I took so many screen caps. I only used a fraction of the ones I used. I think between I think I took like 1,300 just of the Blu-ray, and then like about 100 or more for each of the others, and I only was able to use a handful of those, really. So I know I took at least 1,500, or if not 1,750, just in screen caps, which is very time consuming and tedious. So, yeah, and then I tried to ask around, and then I was like, well, why isn't anybody else going into this? Let me double check myself, you know. So I finally just put it out there. So the response has been really wonderful, and I'm glad I've been able to generate a more discussion, and get people to think about whether they want to upgrade or not, or if you have to, look at your older releases and things. Let's see. In my niche card, I've hit 3,000. Yes, on this Blu-ray. Yeah. Although in the realm of YouTube, we're all still a super niche, but still, I'm just, heck, I was amazed when I got one subscriber. So this is just, never imagined getting this money. Uh, Fleischer Superman video is super comprehensive. No pun intended. Thanks. Let's see. I've watched all the LaserDisc videos. You were the initial reason why I have a very long to get list. Yeah, sorry about that. It's a fun hobby, though. It's not as cut and dry as, having a Blu-ray wish list, so you can just go and buy stuff brand new. You do have to, half the fun is in the chase or digging around in boxes and things. So thankfully, it's like a much less expensive version of record collecting, although they're the same size and heavier and just as hard, if not more difficult to store. And then you run out of space, and then you're like, what have I done? And then you get more, and you're like, well, I had to give them a good home. I can just push my mattress in the corner. It'll be fine. I can make more space somehow. Let's see. Have you dipped your toe into the 3D Film Archives collection of restored Golden Age 3D films? Love the channel. Oh, thanks, Hooray. Hooray TV21. I have read all the reviews, but I hadn't really picked up any of the specific 3D Film Archive releases, just ones where they've worked on it, or they were the ones behind the restoration process. My problem is, I currently don't have, well, I mean, I do still have my old plasma, so I can drag that out and plug it in just for 3D, but the 3D was never that great, and it had some ghosting issues. I hate that there's no really good way for 3D viewing in this day and age. Really, it seems like the best option is to have a home theater projector, particularly like a 1080p one that still does 3D, because those seem to do really well. But after plasma, it's just been like one or two TV models that still had 3D capability. So I really want to see all these new restorations that the 3D Film Archive does, and Kino's put out a lot of them, and some other labels as well. And now Classic Flex has done ones like Eye of the Jury, for example. But there's no easy way to view 3D, and so yeah, I'd like to see more, but I wish there was an easier way. And also, I wish some of the goofed up 3D disc would get fixed. And I'm particularly thinking of Universal and the Creature from the Black Lagoon films, because of course, Revenge of the Creature was infamously mucked up by Universal on the Blu-ray, and then they corrected it by not correcting it. And then the first film has some issues, and they moved the stereo window, so the 3D effect is altered. So that was weird when I finally got to see that disc in 3D, and I'm like, what happened here? And then there was a great article on the archives website, which I would recommend anyone to visit, because they have the best information in the world on the 3D process and different releases. Let's see. Of course, as soon as you look back over, the chat has jumped. So, Addressing the issues only to introduce compression issues. Yes. Hoping for new scans and Blu-ray 4K releases of the Bond films, but not holding my breath. Yeah, that's my big worry right now. Has been for a long time because the 4K masters of the James Bond films were done as early as 2012, and that was when they started finally releasing the waves of Blu-rays. But you first started having a couple 4K DCP showings of select Bond films, and they were advertised and shown in 4K. Then we got the iTunes streaming versions, which they were technically 4K, and they did display some notable improvements over the Blu-ray masters across the board on all the film samples that I saw. And so then it was like, okay, well, the UHD should be coming soon. That didn't happen. Then the MGM buyout happened, and only now is MGM starting to pick up their licensing again in terms of licensing more titles out. But they're also doing more 4K masters, and my real fear is that because as far as we can tell, the 4K masters of the original films were done some time ago. It probably predates HDR. So it's quite possible there are 4K masters that may not have HDR. So that would have to be HDR added after the fact. And MGM is not the best at that. So fingers crossed it happens soon before something weird might happen with the whole Amazon merger thing, because that has, of course, muddied the waters further. But it's just totally up in the air. Again, my fear is that they're possibly SDR, and they would have to be post converted to HDR, and that might be problematic. And I'm sure they're not going to touch the audio problems. So unfortunately, I bet that's going to carry over. So it's all the more important. I've been doing detective work on the other films, trying to figure out the best sounding releases and cobble together my own tracks where possible. And unfortunately, that's required a lot more digging than I originally thought. So I've been working on that on and off for the past year. Really, just whenever I have time squirreled away, I'm looking at other editions I haven't looked at yet, and Japanese editions and old VHS tapes. And I'm like, what have I done? What is my life now? Let's see. Oh, hey Zeta. Crystal Skull was the only indie movie I had seen ever. Didn't care for it. Yeah, it's. I've always felt it must be really weird for people who came in with Crystal Skull. If you didn't like Skull, don't let that deter you. The other three films are totally different, and the thing about Skull that always gets me most is just that it feels so dull. It feels so lifeless frequently, and the photography doesn't help it. I think the best thing about it is the editing, actually, because you've got Michael Kahn still editing, and it's a 2-hour runtime, so the plot holes and things aren't as obvious as they could be if it was a longer runtime. But yeah, don't let that deter you from the original trilogy. It's very different. Dial of Destiny never should have been made. I. Mm, I don't have any major, hopes for it. I'll be honest. I'm pretty much just going because, it's Harrison, and, it's the last go round again, because Last Crusade was meant to be the end of things. I think they waited far too long to make Crystal Skull in the first place. There was plenty of gas left in the tank to make a fourth indie film in the interim, and I think the perfect time would have been the mid 90s, because I started thinking about this again. It's very much like the gap between Die Hard 2 and Die Hard with a Vengeance, and in that interim, Bruce Willis's career was in the same sort of place of getting another upswing. And because there had been a gap, the third film was a little bit different and had a different energy to it, and it became its own distinct thing. And I think having an indie film in like 95, 96 probably would have been a good time. Of course, you would have had to work around Spielberg's schedule. That would have been probably the hardest thing, and Ford's schedule as well. But even if it was 97, a little later, sometime around the mid to late 90s, I think would have been perfect, had they not, gotten around to it sooner. But that's not how it turned out. But I think this. again, it's hard because the reviews are already out and they're not very good for Dial of Destiny, and we have some of the trailers, and it kind of looks like a glorified Disney Plus show in a lot of ways. So, and I'm not a big James Mangold fan, so it's like, well, you just go in and hope it's not going to be terrible, and you hope that there's some sort of feeling of a final grace note since this is the last film and things. So, you know, I'm just gonna go in and be, just like no expectations. Just it is what it is. Let's see what you got, essentially. Carlos Geminos. Hi, Carlos. Which companies cared about putting their movies on DVD and Blu-ray? Yeah, if they had actual, at least a greater sense of putting some quality control in, that would be great. Let's see. Oh shoot, it jumped every time. Apologies, every time I go to the chat, it always wants to jump down a little. Let's see. You a big fan of Halloween? Would you consider doing a history of home video style like I did for Terminator 1 and 2? Interesting stuff there, like color grades and audio cross formats. Um, I've never been as much of a big horror franchise fan. My horror fandom is pretty much rooted in the classic golden age horrors of the 30s, 40s, 50s. But I've never say never. I've been wanting to do more of those. That Terminator video actually turned out really well. I just did that originally because there was a really long. Well, it's still going. There's a really long forum thread on Blu-ray.com, and I saw a lot of back and forth discussion about the same topics. And a lot of people, obviously don't have a LaserDisc player in this day and age, so I decided to just put it all in video form and just do a simple no frills thing. And I've always wanted to do more videos like that, but I kind of felt bad if I didn't have like 50 million little video snippets and things, and then you have to worry about getting copyright strikes and all kinds of stuff like that. And I need to get some actual decent gear to try and do analog captures, because those are a bit more difficult than you might think, and trying to get it right, and trying to deal with things like the red push of NTSC masters that show up differently on when you capture footage. And when I watch on my CRT, I have there's a great Sony feature on late models where you can actually it's basically a defeat mode for that red push, so you can see things without the inherent red push of old pretty much old 90s masters done for NTSC back in the day. And there's no way I know of as of yet to do that in the digital realm as easily. So there's a lot of ins and outs, but I would like to do some more videos like that Terminator video. And again, I am going to do ones for Batman and the Indie trilogy. Let's see. I would say you and another favorite channel of mine are the reason I got into collecting LaserDisc. Akira, the Criterion was the first LD I bought. Crown jewel in my collection. Yeah, that's gotten pretty unobtainium. That's one that everybody likes to chase after. It's a lovely looking jacket. I've just never seen one go for not a crazy price. So good find on that. Shep had to leave. Well, have a happy happy rest of your work shift. Let's see. Oh, Andy dropped in. Hey, Andy. After looking at Police Academy 1984 on LD, and then 1985, no laser rut, analog audio, original mono, dancing THX, mostly dancing, print release as well with Q dots. Yeah, it's always fun when you see Q marks appear on an LD. It's obviously not something people would want to see now, but it always gives me that sort of more physical connection to what I'm watching, because it's sort of like when you see a print in an art house theater and you just don't know what's going to turn up. I like that sort of slight, I call it video archaeology of you put in an old release and you don't know what it's going to be mastered from. You don't know what it's going to be like. Sometimes you're very pleasantly surprised. Sometimes it's a bit rough, but it's still enjoyable. Sometimes you run into bizarre things. Like I just recently remembered the disc for Flatliners. Looks great. It seems like it was a print transfer. It's a little noisy, and but it's randomly in the wrong aspect ratio, and not, one of those common LD things where it's a scope film and it's in 2.21, or it's a little cropped on the sides. No, this is like trying to do 185. And so it's really bizarre looking. It's still actually watchable, but it makes that disc kind of unique. So I guess that's why there's a reissue with this, with almost the same identical cover from like a year or two later on the database. It doesn't say it, but I would guess it was fixing the aspect ratio. But I remember the first time I popped that particular disc in, and I'm like, wait, isn't this? I thought this was a scope film. What's going on here? I looked it up, and I'm like, yeah, this somebody goofed. Let's see. Matthew got. Oh, hey Matthew. Congrats. I also loved your commentary for Bond and Laserdisc. Thank you. I need to try and do some more tracks. There's, like, of course, a ton more I'd like to do, but the trouble is finding the time, and then preparing yourself and trying to overcome nerves, because it's a lot easier than it sounds until you just sit down in front of a microphone and the movie starts running and your brain goes in 20 different directions and you're like, I have a brain freeze. Let's see. Oh, darn. I hate it when it just jumps. Let's see. I'm at over 300 discs currently, getting some Criterion titles, having plenty of fun with the format. And thanks to my work, I have access to the popular LD arcade games. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've seen I've seen, of course, some videos on YouTube about like teardowns and repair, but I've of course played Dragon's Lair in the wild, and I've seen one actually opened before, so it's always fascinating to actually see the other end of Laserdisc in action, and the arcade realm, and actually see it in person. I've only seen LD in a few other random instances, more like commercial type things before they upgraded. I remember years and years and years ago, it was I've been to Disney World once or twice on family trips and things, but the first time, I can't remember what ride it was, but I remember looking around, and this was like it was like mid 2000s, so it wasn't super super long ago technically, but they still had, like, I think it was a Pioneer Industrial, I think like a 2400 or something, in one of the cabinets or consoles, and the sort of when you can glimpse like the sort of behind the scenes stuff, running some a video or something, which I thought was interesting. So every once in a while, you might still spot like a industrial player in use somewhere, but it's really drying up. So now it's just like when you see a Dragon's Lair cabinet. Let's see. AZDH is here. Hello. Do you think 4K will die out? Bought 20 of my favorites on 4K and don't think any of them are better than the Blu-ray. And I have a nice TV and player. Um, I know there's been a lot of speculation about the UHD format and how it's not getting market penetration. The big hurdles, of course, having to overcome people just being accustomed to streaming, and keeping it very no frills and liking the ease of access, but and then trying to tell them about the quality loss and things. Usually, they either don't care or it goes over their heads. I think the bigger problems, though, have been just the sort of lack of awareness that people have, because the advertising and the market saturation has been, obviously it's been less than what Blu-ray was, but, even most people in the general public caught on with what Blu-ray was pretty quickly, whether they, got a player or not. But you ask a person on the street, what, do you like UHDs? They're probably not gonna know what you're talking about. And then you explain it, and they're like, oh, well, I don't have a player for one of those. Also, the entrance point is, it's higher price because you have to buy a UHD player, and they're all pricey, and there's not too many of them, and there's really only, a handful of models from Sony and Panasonic that are worth it. And then they don't down convert very easily to SDR or 1080p if you don't have a 4K television. So that's another hurt. There's basically a lot of hurdles. And I think that's what's hurt the format more than anything. And then even when you get it, even though when you know what you're doing, I'll be the first to admit it. When I finally started, playing discs myself with a Panasonic 820 and a Sony OLED, I had to go through all kinds of hurdles just trying to figure out, okay, well, what is this doing, and how does this handle Dolby Vision discs? And oh, there's a separate sub menu inside the sub menu just for Dolby Vision. How do I work with the motion settings? There's a lot of extra steps and a lot of bumps in the road that didn't work out. So uh, I don't think it's going away, but I think it's easy to see how this could end up going somewhere like jump over to music, like what happened with SACD and DVD audio being designed to replace the CD and being technologically superior. But the players were expensive. They were a niche item. They were not the easiest things to work with. They had custom copy protection, so they didn't always work with everything, and you had to tinker with it to get it at least somewhat to how you wanted it. And I think a lot of that is also what you see in UHD. So again, I don't think it's going anywhere because again, SACD is still with us in a very limited capacity. But yeah, I think it's never going to obviously hit the heights of Blu-ray, and it still is astonishing that DVD outsells everything. Simply, I think, due to the ease of use and the gigantic market share. So hopefully, we can convince more people that UHDs are worthwhile. Let's see. Let's see. Murdersville's here. Hello. I think the loss of network in the UK shows you need to support labels whenever you can. Yeah, that was a big one because that just happened out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden, it's like there were so many network releases I wanted to get over the years, but just they were just no warning, no final sale. It was just, and it was so fast that everybody wondered, is are they gone? And now that it's indeed true, and they had released so many, particularly British things, films, and especially television shows that nobody else has touched. So I don't know how that's going to happen in terms of trying to license that material, but obviously you do need to try and grab any network releases that you're particularly interested in before they start going into the stratosphere on eBay and such. Sorry, I had to grab my ginger ale. No, I'm not sponsored by Reeds, but yeah, you guys know me. I drink too much ginger ale. Let's see. Richard says, "Hope they ditch the Lowry editions." Yes, absolutely. I take it you mean the Bond films. Yes, those are long, long outdated. Although I have to kind of thank them for helping to fuel my interest in video issues. It's not just the Bond films, but a lot of things Lowry handled. They even did the Indiana Jones DVDs, which is why those are. While the audio on them is great, the picture, you look at them now and you can see a lot of the telltale Lowry tomfoolery going on. Let's see. Matthew says, I saw the blue for The Spy Who Loved Me. Thought it was really very good. Don't like the DNR and color timing on the Connery films. Yeah. Spy is, I have a theory. I don't know if it's true, but my guess is that Spy is the only one of the Blu rays that's actually coming from a 4K source because it was one of the last ones done. And Spy never had an HD master before that point. They were just reusing the old standard F master. Lowry hit it with a bunch of noise reduction and gave it new color timing for the Ultimate Edition DVD, and it looked awful. So when that Blu-ray came out, it was like, whoa, this is another source. This is a new scan. So I think it is the best looking of all of the Bond Blu-rays for sure. John Moore, hello. Congrats on 3K. Thank you. What are some of the audio issues on the Bond potential reissues? Oh, oh boy, that is a can of worms for sure. But essentially, um, you have to all look at all the films because not all of them have maintained their original audio on every release, and the original audio tracks that are around are made secondary to remixes. The mono films suffer the worst because they were remixed to the 5.1 horribly back in like 2004 for the 2006 DVDs. and those are a mess of just phasing errors and all kinds of junk and some new effects thrown in here and there. But then when you actually listen to when they give you an option for the original audio, it's usually heavily noise reduced and EQ'd and just sounds canned and tinny. Trying to find which film sounds best on which release is a bit more complicated, but for the most part, most of the films sound significantly better on their letterbox laserdisc releases, where you have a PCM audio track without compression, obviously, but they also haven't been hit with the same level of noise reduction and such. So some films you do have to go to other sources, but for the most part, the laserdiscs are the best source for the original audio tracks for Dr. No through License to Kill. Then when you get to the Brosnan films in the 5.1 era, they've thankfully stayed pretty much the same. I prefer certain ones, but the audio tracks on the Blu-rays still hold up really well, and they're lossless, so they haven't been messed around with, thankfully. Don't forget CED. Oh no, I've never gone into CED. I've never bought a CED. Although I'm sure I will at some point. I find it fascinating to learn about, but I don't ever really see a need for getting into it. I admire people who get into CED and beta and keep their machines going and learn about how to maintain them, but I have not yet gone into the yellow and blue caddy land of the CEDs. Let's see. Okay, Matthew, I think talking about Crystal Skull, that Marion pops up. Yes, that's uh, Marion popping back up in Skull and Harrison Ford's presence for me, along with the editing, are the three real highlights, if you could call anything in Skull highlights. But and yeah, Williams' score is okay. It's not bad, but I try not to think about Skull very much, to be honest. Let's see. CB DeMille fan says, "What's your favorite DeMille film and why?" Ooh, that is a good question. Hmm. Well, doggone it. Now I'm trying to think. What is my favorite? I don't know if I've ever actually thought about that before. I'd have to think about that for a little while. Because I haven't seen every DeMille film, and I definitely prefer the earlier films, which had more energy and grit to them before he switched over to primarily doing big, gigantic Technicolor spectacles and remakes of his own films and things. But that is a good question. I will have to mull over that. Let's see. Matthew says CG in Skull was awful, though near Star Wars prequel level. Yeah, it's really bad, and it stands out to me so much that honestly, I actually have an easier time with the prequel CG because at least that was limited because of the time in which they were made, and you come to expect that. But when the rest of Skull is still being shot on film, it makes the CG stand out more to me. Uh, let's see. PK Cream Rep Crimson, hello. 1998 Indy 4 with a 90s Dolby Digital GTS track. Oh man, that would have been amazing. I'm hoping Dial of Destiny has a Dolby Atmos track that's worth going to a Dolby Cinema for, but I'm afraid it's going to be really puny sounding because yeah, I thought revisiting Skull that at least the sound mix would be, halfway decent, and yeah, it's okay, but it's not there. It doesn't have that full indie intensity. I mean, there's a couple very brief, rear center bits thrown behind you, and there's a couple loud moments, but it just does not have the oomph factor. So yeah, I hope Dial of Destiny has a good mix, but I don't know. I haven't been impressed with a modern film mix in a long time. Let's see. System says Terminator video is how I found you. Okay, cool. Thank you. Oh wow. I guess several people got hooked by my Terminator video. Halloween is in a similar situation where the original mono is stock on LD. Creative companies do all this work on video but don't care about preserving audio. That's that's a significant chunk of my life right there is when I realized that, and I still don't understand that at all. Other than sound always, gets the short end of the stick. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I hate it. I feel like the chat always jumps, and I'm trying to catch back up to where I was. Um, let's see. Retro game stream. My friend loves physical media, nerds out, but doesn't love old movies like I do. Can you recommend a restored film that's technically impressive? Thanks, Retro. That's a good question. Trying to think off the top of my head one that's good and solid across the board. Also has some good extras and things. Of course, now all I can think of that I'm on the spot is like, well, that's good, but that has an issue, and this has an issue, and that has an issue. I can't think of a perfect. Well, the easiest. I know. Well, practically any indicator release is an easy one. Of course, you have to have region-free capability for Blu-ray, but they always knock it out of the park. I would say any indicator release, like one of their Hammer titles, or gosh, there's so many. Their Dietrich and von Sternberg box is amazing. If you want to go really classic, their John Ford box is great. Uh, I hate it when I'm on the spot because then I can't think of things. And I know as soon as I end the stream, I'll think of like like 100 different ones. So sorry, but I would say definitely try starting with maybe some indicator discs. Let's see. Devil Doll, hello. Are there advantages to the Batman LDs over the current Blu-ray? Yes. It's but it's more on the audio side of things. It, it- I'll cover all of this when I do a home video history, but essentially, 89 has a much. I always refer to it as it's a bit bassier, it's a bit warmer. Uh, that track is Matrix PCM on the Laserdisc, and it's also in 5.1 discrete on the old Flipper DVD. I always have preferred that mix to how it sounded when they redid it in 2005 and 5.1. It wasn't a remix per se. They didn't change any effects, but it just never sounded quite as didn't have the same oomph to it. Returns has pretty much stayed the same, and then but then you get to the UHDs and the new Blu-rays, which are completely a new remix in Atmos. They have completely different sound effects. I hate those mixes with a passion, so I never watch the UHDs, and so they're kind of pointless to me because the audio is ruined by these having these new remixes only. I'm also not big on the color timing of returns because they did go a bit into the teal realm, and I don't like to usually put that out there unless I'm 100% sure. But in returns' case, I am, because I have seen the vault print that Warner used to loan out, so I have seen it projected in a proper theater from the Warner Brothers print. It was an original Fuji release print from 1992. It was in really good shape except for some real change wear, and it did not have any of that in there. And this was a couple years ago, but I did take a lot of notes, and I've researched these films too much. So as soon as the UHD of Returns came out and I saw what the master looked like, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Um, yeah, so that's my issues with the Burton films. When you look at the Schumacher films, the one interesting thing is forever. For some reason, the Matrix audio is actually a bit more. Uh, uh, I mean, it's a bit better integrated into the in terms of the mix itself compared to the 5.1. So that's one of those rare instances where I actually kind of prefer the matrixed audio over the discrete, and that is of course only on LD and VHS. It and Batman and Robin also have remixes only on the UHDs, which drive me crazy. They're not as aggressively remixed as the Burton films, but they're also remixes, and that really bugs me because they have no original audio option. But the transfers on them look great. So yeah, like everything, it's kind of a long complicated answer, but again, I'm going to do a whole home video history on those, and there's a lot to get into. But I think having all four LDs, if you're into collecting, they're not very expensive. You can track them down. They're all good transfers for their eras. They're not perfect, but I still really enjoy them. And usually every year when I rewatch the films, I'm usually doing the LDs because they're my personal favorite. Let's see. Matthew just discovered and subbed to your channel yesterday. I might have been the 3,000 subscriber. Oh, thanks, man. Chris is here. Hello. Let's see. Matthew says, almost bought the rental Star Trek The Motion Picture, but couldn't justify the expense. Ticket Macross, do you remember Love for only $20? No Obi, but that's not bad at all. Let's see. PMAC Movies, hello. I think the big channels that get Blu-rays for free are honest with their reviews. Well, I want to be diplomatic and polite, and this also goes for a lot of I'd say a lot of online and like written reviews as well. You never know what somebody's actual process is, and you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but there are times where especially if you're actually reviewing this and you're supposed to be giving it your due diligence, and you should know something about video and audio quality, and if you have the ability or you have the experience, you should be able to compare it to past viewings of the same film or look at older releases. There are times where I see a so-called review and I'm like, I don't, I can't really. That doesn't seem like you really put in the effort, and then it especially stings when you see that somebody got a free review copy, and it's like, well, would you have said anything if you found an issue? I've never gotten a screener myself, and obviously you would kind of feel bad, having to say, well, I got a review copy of this, but this is a problem, and this shouldn't have gone out this way. But that's kind of the job. So if I ever did get something to review, if I found something like really catastrophic and it was like a pre-release, I might contact the company or the label and say, hey, just FYI, that this is a problem here, or there's a dropout at this point or something that you guys should try and fix. Again, if it was before the release date, if it was possible. If I found something really bad, I'd try and give them a shout. But if I was just randomly sent to like a screener copy to review of something, although I don't think I'm on anybody's radar, and if I was, I'm sure I'm sure there are probably some individuals at Paramount and Warner who are not fans of me. Um, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, or I'm not gonna sidestep around issues if I find them. But yeah, there are times where I definitely I definitely am see a review and I'm like, I don't think this is 100% honest. Let's see. Dr. Impossible, hello. Network in the UK had the Baron and the Sweeney up and ready for HD on Blu-ray, and then last year Network had the Hammer deal. Yeah, that's all up in smoke now. So I don't know what's going to happen with any of the network catalog. It's going to have to be I guess it's going to have to go through like arbitration or something, because I know they just basically were liquidated. So I don't know if there's like a moratorium period or how that's going to work out, but that is going to tie up a significant amount of titles. Let's see. Have you seen some of the results of AI upscaling, like Topaz upscale? While not an actual remastering, the results are pretty neat. I've seen a little bit here and there. I think it can be an interesting tool, again, if used properly, like anything. But yeah, it's. I'm sure it's going to become more and more of part of just the whole process, because there's already, of course, automated damage removal, which doesn't always do things perfectly. So I think with anything, you still need to have somebody in there to double check things. And At least have some human element there to look at something and go, no, that's not an artifact, or excuse me, or that's doing something weird there. Let's go in and work on that one particular aspect. But yeah, it's interesting to see that already that stuff like that is even possible. Let's see. Uh, Oh, Cinema Dave's here. Hello. Great channel. Check out Cinema Dave Media if you haven't before. Thanks, man. Congrats on on the subs. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Let's see. Maybe Indicator might do a deal with Studio Canal. Now the network has gone into liquidation. Supported them since I started 25 years ago. It sucks. Yeah. Yes, it does. Indeed. I don't know. I mean, maybe if it works out, Indicator might be able to do some more Hammer titles. But yeah, again, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of moratorium period. Let's see. Just trying to play catch up here. You have a great tone and easy way of talking to learn from. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I always wonder how my babblings, that's at least what I call them, how it sounds on the other end. Because especially when I'm editing myself, I'm like, I don't even know if I sound good or not anymore. I've heard myself talking for so long. Did you decide to break down and go to London for the festival you were drooling over? I wish. Oh man, I looked into what it would cost me and trying to get passport updated, and yeah, unfortunately I couldn't make it work. But boy, that just, oh gosh, that was an amazing lineup. So I hope it's supposed to be a yearly thing, but I hope they keep that going. But that was an amazing lineup at the BFI. Let's see. Was a film that desperately needs a Blu-ray but still only has a DVD release. The Dresser from Peter Yates is a top candidate. Love your channel. Thank you. Well, actually, what I just reviewed, the Drums of Fu Manchu serial needs one badly, because that is VCI DVD from an old VHS master. But pretty much every serial needs help and needs a Blu-ray. That is, the more I get into serials, the more I'm realizing I'm like, holy crap, these have been treated so badly. So that's an easy one, although I know that's a very niche thing in 2023. But they've been kicked around for so long that I'm amazed that any new serial releases happen. So that would be an easy one. But in terms of a film that only has a DVD release, let me think. And of course, the hard part is trying to come up with an answer off the cuff and not have to sit there and go, well, let me wonder a minute. Let's see. Well, there's so many in the Warner Archive DVD line that I hope they get around to doing on Blu-ray. Obviously, a lot of the Flynn films, like Captain Blood, are ones I'm absolutely hope, fingers crossed for. The original, or I should say the 1937 Prisoner of Zenda is another one. But yeah, there's so many and then there's some that are still stuck on just laserdisc. There's some that are stuck in sort of limbo, and then there are so many films that are available on Blu-ray or UHD, but have massive problems in the audio, or don't have original audio, or have revisionist transfers, or have transfer issues. Case in point. Two film series that I rewatch every year, and I always rewatch the Laserdisc for specific reasons. So yeah, I can go down the rabbit hole on that question for sure. Let's see. Renan says, "Do you read the Bond comic strips? Some of them predate the films and are very interesting." To be honest, I had never really read a lot of the Bond comics before a couple years ago. And I was growing up, I just didn't have access to them. I didn't even know they existed really until I started being able to look at Bond websites and things. And then thankfully, Titan Books started doing reprints of the Bond comics, and then I finally started getting to read the adaptations of Fleming, and then see how that differed from the original strips. And then when they started doing original stories, how that sort of went. And then I've been slowly but surely getting into all of the later comics. So I've read a variety of some of the 80s and 90s Bond comics, like some of the stuff from Dark Horse, and of course there's all the stuff that Dynamite has done. And I've read a couple different issues of those, but I've been trying to get more into the Bond comics because that's really the only realm of Bond fandom that I've not like fully completely gone through. So I realized I was kind of slacking in that area. So I've been trying to dig more into the comic side of things. Let's see. Mozart's Ghost here. Hello, sir. OLED panels becoming more affordable might help average viewers to start appreciating picture quality more and perhaps turn them on to some physical releases, at least for favorite films. Yes. Yes. Getting an OLED, yeah, that will, as I've said before, it's a night and day thing, and if you know anything about video, you are going to see every little potential issue be magnified to such a degree. It's going to literally sit there, especially if you're sitting at a decent viewing distance, or especially even more if you sit closer. You know, very quickly it's going to be like a flashing neon sign. Look at me, compression noise. Um, just had the same thing. I was looking at the indie UHDs again, and they're Paramount. You can tell because every time there's a shot of a sky, it's yeah, there's green there, but there's a crap ton of compression noise. You know, all you have to do is go to the Tanis dig and Raiders. I mean, even specifically, right before Indy goes into the map room, and they're standing up on the hill over the top of the entrance to the map room to drop down into. If you just look in the sky, it's just a wall of compression noise mixing in with the grain and stuff. And I'm like, no wonder I braced myself to look at this on an OLED because it does not hide stuff if if you have it set up properly and you don't have motion interpolation on and you have all of the silly bells and whistles on your TV disabled and you have it properly set up, it makes everything apparent. Let's see. Congratulations on getting 3,000 subs. You earned it with your well-made, well-organized content. Oh, thank you. Wow, thank you. uh Chris is here. Hello. Gonna order King Solomon's Mines and Land of the Pharaohs soon. Yeah, those are super exciting. I'm still stunned they're doing the King Solomon's Mines remake because that was one of the first LDs I ever discussed on this channel actually. And I was always wondering, I'm like, man, this would look amazing in HD if they did a new scan. Never did I think they would get around to it, but it's definitely well deserving for all of the the Technicolor location footage alone. Hope they have proper QC at Warner's. Oh wait, yeah. Warner Studio label, no. Warner streaming division, no. Warner Archive, yes. Yeah, because that's a different section in the same corporate machine. Do you plan on doing any videos about your favorite and least favorite DVD releases of all time? Ooh, I have actually toyed around with that. I start. Okay. I think I dropped out there for a second. Let me know if I'm back or not. Of course, right when I thought I was almost caught up to I was making my way through. Okay, cool. I'm on. Thanks, Horizons. Okay. All right. I'm gonna try and catch up with the trouble is the chat starts to get away with you, and I try to cover everything, and then I'm just like, whoa, I'm way behind. Um, so yeah, all right, let me find where I was because of course it jumped. Okay. All right. Let me try to play catch up real fast. But yeah, essentially, I would like to do a video on just some favorite DVDs, some of the worst DVDs, and then also I'd like to do something about really notably bad packaging because I can go to town on that. All I have to do is talk about, the stuff like the Ten Commandments stone tablets or the Ford at Fox box, the Hitchcock Premiere collection. There's so much stuff. And then, of course, there's totally crazy stuff like the Criterion Citizen Kane UHD. Yeah, still not over that one. Okay. Let's see. Any thoughts about Kino's Night of the Hunter release? Yes. Talking about the aspect ratio. Yeah. I know they framed it at 185, and I know that previously it was 166, and the UCLA restoration was done. And MGM put it out on their DVD at 133, but they had to crop a couple shots for revealing too much. Yeah, it, obviously I can't go to a theater in 1955 and look at the aspect ratio. I think either 166 or 185 will be okay. And if you look at screen cut comparisons, the 185 still looks okay, but it's obviously tighter than the 166. So I see why they went with 166 beforehand. It's if you can't tell 100% what the original ratio was, it does seem like a good compromise ratio just for fitting everything in and giving everybody enough headroom and not chopping off foreheads and things. So if I couldn't find official documentation, had it been me, I probably would have stuck with 166. My bigger issue is the audio because I've already seen people note that the 2.0 track is a down mix of the 5.1 that Kino has on there, which is really major because already the Criterion was a good Blu-ray, but its mono is terrible. The best mono I know of is still the old MGM DVD of the UCLA restoration. That lossy mono track is miles better than the Criterion and Aero disc. So I assume it also now has to be, of course, better than the Kino release. So I'm glad I hung on to that for a while. So um, I've looked at the VHS and the Laserdisc too. They're okay, but I still think that that MGM DVD is the best audio source. So it's unfortunate that we still can't get one release that has great picture and great sounds together. Just picked up the Fairbanks Three Musketeers based on a recommendation. You weren't kidding; it looks amazing. Hopefully Robin Hood is next. Yes, Garrick, that is a phenomenal disc. I'm still amazed that it was done and it looks that good. Robin Hood is actually coming. It's coming from Cohen later this year. It's a double feature with Black Pirate, and I'm like, so I cannot wait until that comes out. Never got the Willow LD because of the rot. Yeah, same here. It's a super rotter. And yeah, the others are the pan and scan. So yeah, I actually don't have a physical copy of Willow because of course the Fox releases went out of print, and I've just meant to pick one of those up. I just haven't gotten around to it. I need to do that. Let's see. Any thoughts on the Magnificent Seven UHD from Shout Factory? I haven't gotten that yet. I've been wanting to. I was very hopeful that would turn out well because I was surprised that that Mag 7 was coming to UHD that quickly. I'm also worried about the mono track, okay, because MGM really scrubbed that up for the Laserdisc reissue. They used no noise in a lot of things, so that track, I don't think we've ever gotten a mono on modern releases that hasn't been like super scrubbed clean. And I think that Shout release does finally port all of the DVD extras that the Blu-ray didn't have. There's a really great commentary on the DVD. So of course I have multiple releases just for extras. So yeah, I really want to check that out because I'm hoping it's good. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And of course, being Shout, it's a little pricier because they're always pricier for some reason. Eric's here. Hello. You ever dance with a live stream by the pale moonlight? Yes. uh, it's just something I ask all my subscribers. I just like the sound of it. Let's see. Want Mark of Zorro and Don Q or Iron Mask? Yes. I hope more Fairbanks comes along. That will be amazing to see a giant amount of Fairbanks on Blu-ray finally. Uh, I tried to recommend your channel in a YouTube comment thread and it was automatically removed for violating community guidelines. Oh, oh gosh, do they hate my channel name? I didn't know that would make the community bots angry. I don't know. Because they are damn fools. I don't know. Let's see. We've seen people in the hackers thread demanding Shout use ancient DTS CD discs to just to restore the 5.1 mix. No, I hadn't. It is possible to do that, although if you're officially releasing something, I don't know why you wouldn't just go to the actual, get the source from the studio. But I mean, it is doable to extract and convert theatrical DTS from a CD-ROM, but it's a very finicky process, and it's been developed, but it's not a perfect thing because you have to filter out the LFE because it was encoded in the surrounds and the cinematic design, and it's also going to be a particular format and a particular bit rate. So you essentially have to play with it. But yeah, I hadn't seen that, so that's interesting. For your only here. Hello, sir. Thank you. Let's see. None of the Trek TOS films have their theatrical stereo except for the SLV on the UHDs. Yeah, that really bugs me. I haven't gotten any of the actual the TOS UHDs yet because I was gonna wait and see how they turned out, and then probably get them on a sale. And also, I was interested to see how the SLP turned out, but then they put it in the big motion picture box set alone as an exclusive. So I've just been waiting to see if they might drop in price a little on sale and just get the 1 through 6 box. But yeah, not having the original mixes really bugs me because I've been to you guys know me. I'm an audio purist, so I can't stand it when they don't include original mixes in any form. I don't think they've been extraordinarily messed with, but they always have there's always the possibility they had the urge to go in there and just mess around with things like people did on Raiders of the Lost Ark many times. And also the original mixes do sound really good even on the laser discs, and some on the DVDs as well. My favorite version of motion picture is the letterbox LD. That matrix track is phenomenal. So I've not yet heard a version that sounds as good as that old LD, which also has a really good transfer on it for LD. Let's see. And he says, Wrath of Khan, the 5.1 has still not been fixed with mag damage on the right channel. Only way to hear the missing track is LD, VHS beta, anything, but anything pre DVD. Okay. Yeah. Honestly, I usually wind up rewatching my Laserdiscs anyway. I have the DVDs and Blu-rays, and the Blu-rays are a hot mess. Let's see. Let's see. Oh wow, Ryan Cushing popped up. Hello, sir. Uh, oh gosh, yes. Found some OMDs for you. Okay. I'm always happy to partake in OMDs, old man discs. If you do not watch the Laserdisc Wolfpack, Ryan is one of the chief members, head of Broterion Films, and he and I have fun going on about the merits of Broterion versus old man discs, which is what everybody refers to pretty much anything I watch. But yes, that's always great. I'm always happy to see a new OMD. Let's see. Just trying to get caught up here. I think I'm getting relatively caught up. Of course, I say that, and as soon as I do, it jumps further. Okay. Tag 007 says, "What's funny on the Batman the Animated Series review? Cape and Cow conspiracy episode you pointed to has corrected audio for the episode, but they screwed up the opening and has no sound effects." Oh, interesting. Is that on the streaming version? Because I know they supposedly corrected the audio on the streaming versions, but it wouldn't surprise me if they messed it up further on the disc release. That's one of the ones that has the really noisy, defective audio, which I still don't even know what happened with those. Um, Chris says, "Do you think we'll ever get a new release of Gunga Din?" I keep hoping. That would definitely be Warner Archive. They haven't said anything, but that's one I really hope for. That would be a stunner of a Blu-ray. I don't know if maybe Criterion picked up the rights because they like to do that and then sit on it for a long time. So that's also possible, but I would assume it's Warner Archive that would be doing that. Let's see. Okay, I see some Dragon Ball Z discussion. Orange Bricks DBZ release is probably the absolute worst offender for any animation on home media. Wow. I guess I'm. It's good that I haven't seen that because if you're saying that already, I'd probably be tearing my hair out. I've never really gotten into Dragon Ball Z, but I hate for anything to be treated that badly on video. Are you excited for Mask of the Phantasm coming to 4K UHD, or it could be another Warner catastrophe? That's my fear. 100%. I saw that announcement and I was like, "Huh?" And then I was like, "Oh dear. This could be really bad." This will yeah. Warner Archive did not scan the film in 4K as far as I'm aware of. I think there was a 2K master. I could be wrong, but this could be like Enter the Dragon where Warner just does their own new 4K scan for a release, but the archive specifically has said in interviews and podcasts they had to make sure they did the transfer right and they did the cleanup process correctly to handle animation properly, which is why their Phantasm and Sub Zero discs are great. And the series looks and sounds like crud when it shouldn't because the studio label handled it. So, this being 4K and HDR and being the studio label, I have no idea, but it could be really bad. But let's hope it's not as bad as the Fleischer release. But they could go to crazy town and make it even worse than the Fleischer release. So I'm very very leery about that. I'm still stunned they're even doing it. Actually, that was a total surprise. Okay, let's see. Crimson Ghost needs a full restoration. I believe there's some sort of scan of the edited movie from the 60s, but that's hardly the full serial. Yeah. I've never gotten anything from Serial Squadron, but I have looked at their website and they do various scans and things of serials. I think they have a version of Crimson Ghost, but that's another one of the ones that I think you really have to jump back quite a ways. And admittedly, I've started watching serials on VHS because for some, that's the only official release. And I've found like some of the Republic serials. I'm actually watching one right now. I've been watching this will be my second serial that I've watched start to finish on a dual VHS release. So that definitely makes me feel old, but it's a nice bit of nostalgia too. They actually look pretty good, but I haven't done that before of just watching a 4 hour serial across two VHS tapes. So it's crazy that some things you still have to do that. Oh, just as soon as I get caught up, it jumps. Sorry, sorry if I look a little scatterbrained. Let's see. David Wong's here. Hello. Any chance on a review of Warner Archives' Curse of Frankenstein and Horror of Dracula? I did cover Curse of Frankenstein when I did because I made it. I think that was my first disc of the year, along with Wax Museum. But I did cover it, but that was before I think I had come up with my whole everything in the kitchen sink approach to doing a disc review in a video form. So I need to go back and look at that. Maybe I could do like a more detailed one. I haven't done Horror of Dracula yet because that still needs more work, and it's hard to 100% say the archive disc is the best version. I think it's the best go-to version, but it's not perfect because it's having to recolor time the BFI master that had all the awful cold blues and just had really terrible color timing. But some people prefer that disc because it's not as dark as the archive disc. So I know they've said George Feltenstein has said that they are trying to work on Horror of Dracula and do a second attempt at it, but it's like Curse of Frankenstein. It's a very intensive process and having to eke the scan out of the materials because the materials are so compromised. So I've held off on doing it, but I guess I could go ahead and just review the archive disc as is. Probably should, and especially for October. But yeah, that's one where it's hard to pinpoint for people one particular release above everyone. I'd still go with the archive Blu-ray as an easy recommendation, but with the caveat that it's sort of a best as is approach, because it wasn't a brand new scan and it does fix the color problems of the BFI master, but at the same time it introduces a lot of black crush issues and it is very dark around the edges. So I know some people aren't a fan of that. It's a joke when you can do better with a better or on a fan scan than what you can do with original masters and negatives when talking about various companies. Yes, that is absolutely true. Favorite classic monsters film and why is it The Invisible Man? Ooh, Bride of Frankenstein is always my go-to answer, but Invisible Man is number two if we're talking about just the iconic Universal monsters and horror films. Well, anything James Whale, of course, is number one for me, but Invisible Man and Bride of Frankenstein are right there. Bride was the one that cemented my love of the Universal horrors, but more and more I realized the Invisible Man is so absolutely perfect from start to finish, and it has the James Whale whimsy, but the whimsy doesn't take over everything. So it's a bit more consistently narrative driven, if I can put it that way. But those are my top two, along with Old Dark House and The Mummy and Frankenstein and Dracula and the rest of them, because I can't I can sort of split hairs to choose personal favorites, but admittedly I love them all, and I even have great fondness for the ones that aren't perfect later in the run and have issues of their own. There's still great stuff in them. And there are some that eventually you come to love and appreciate, even though they're not perfect. Okay, let's see. Any chance of a review of the Three Musketeers films coming out in UHD? I'm very interested in those. They're Studio Canal of the two Salkinds films. I was very surprised that they got the UHD treatment. It just never occurred to me that somebody would do the Salkinds Musketeer films. I'm very interested to see what those look like. I would like to check those out, and if I do, I'll do a review. Of course, I'd have to import them because I don't think anybody's doing them here, or at least no one's announced it. So I'd have to import those. But I'm very curious to see how those turn out. Let's see. Missed the Hardy Boys reviews. Will you be continuing the series at some point? Yes, I'm sorry I've gotten behind on those. I've meant to. My original plan was, oh well, I can just do a video every time I read some of the books, but then I get sidetracked, or I run out of time, and so then I had read a couple more, and then I needed to do like at least two more videos, and then other things happened, and then I had to put things on pause for things like the Fleischer Superman Blu-ray, and then having to do all kinds of research, and that video became longer than I intended. But yes, I have been meaning to do that. I'm going to get back to doing that. I hope to have my video on what happened at midnight, which is the next one I'm due for, book 10. Um, I'm hoping to have all my videos on the original canon, so that of course is 58 plus the handbook. So I'm hoping to have that done relatively soon. I'm going to try and just keep cracking along with that, and just keep continually. If I can get on a schedule, that'll help. But of course, real life likes to interfere with the best laid plans, and then I feel like there's so many great booktube channels that start these reading projects, and then they have like another reading project announcement and another one, and it's like I feel the same way because there's so many books that I want to reread or do a reading project or do some videos on. And I'm getting in my indie phase for Dial of Destiny. So I've been reading some of the books and rereading the novels. And then I'm like, I should do videos on the novels. So I'd also like to do those. So that's a whole other book series. And I've got to finish my Avon Phantom reviews, because I did finish reading them, but I just haven't had the time to do other videos on them, so I need to do those as well. So there's three book series reviews I need to do. Let's see. Oh, Let's see. I swear every time I get to my place, I, I have to then keep scrolling. Adventures of Robin Hood is also noise reduced on DVD and Blu-ray. Yes, the Criterion Laserdisc is far better. Um, it's actually a really lovely looking transfer. I was so shocked when I actually watched it for the first time how good it looks, and it looks remarkably close to the most recent restoration and how the Blu-ray image looks. So that is a phenomenal LD, and I still think the best source of the mono track. The MGM version came out a little later, nowhere near as good. They jacked the color saturation levels to extremes on that disc, almost to the point where some people start to get that 2004 Star Wars DVD Lobster Man red face in terms of their skin tones, and all the costumes are just they just like burst off because somebody jacked the saturation knob all the way up. So if you want to get Adventures of Robin Hood, just go for the Criterion release and has great extras. And again, I think it has the best source of the mono. Tiny Purple Fishes, hello. Paramount, yes, it's not rumor. They are actually doing Once Upon a Time in the West for 4K. And some people have seen it pop up on, like, I think some streaming services. And it looks like the new master is starting to float around. Should I pick up the current Blu-ray before it's replaced? I would say yes, just to make sure, because you never know what's gonna turn up on a new master. Plus, it's not super expensive, or at least it shouldn't be. But the mono track on all the releases has been the same thing as the Laserdisc, the letterbox one, and they don't sound they haven't really been messed with, but they're lossy. So the Laserdisc does sound better, but it is the same source. It's never been cleaned up, and I don't bother with the remix because you don't remix all the Unity film. It's stupid. It's setting yourself up for failure. But with it being Paramount, I would just go ahead and pick up the old Blu-ray just to be on the safe side. I'm hoping it turns out well, but it's Paramount, so that hope is very small. And also, it's still going to have the same music error at the end with the wrong music cue that's been stuck there since the '80s reconstruction. So that still bugs me because it's not supposed to just suddenly see into Cheyenne's theme. It's supposed to keep going with the beautiful operatic voice into the complete final fade out of the credits, and it doesn't do that. And once I found out about that, now every time I see the film, all I could think of at the end is like, this is the wrong music, doggone it. But it'd be nice if they fix that, but it's Paramount, so that's not going to happen. Let's see. Okay, yeah, talking about yeah, not including for the Trek TOS films, locking the special longer version to the motion picture set, and then not having a separate disc for the six director's cut. Oh, cool! Getting the Archive Brothers Grimm. Yes. Oh gosh, that's an incredible disc. Oh, 4K Cinema's here. Hello. Is the DTS track from the special edition Batman '89 different from the Blu-ray? If you're meaning the special edition DVD, no, it is the same track in lossy Dolby Digital and lossy DTS. It's the same track that's the True HD on the original Blu-ray. That goes for all four films on their two disc DVD special editions and their first Blu-rays. Those Blu-rays were based on those 2005 special edition DVDs, so the audio is the same. Let's see. I don't buy a lot of Criterion, but the releases I do have are great, like their Godzilla box, which was great, but also massive, couldn't fit on my regular shelf. Yeah. It's really cracked me up how Criterion started doing that, because that is very reminiscent of having giant laserdisc boxes like T2 and My Fair Lady, and of course Fantasia, that we all like to complain about, that fit on no shelf. And you kind of have to scratch your head and think, well, where do they think people are going to put these? And yeah, it's a display piece, but where are you gonna put it? How are you going to store it? Like a pre-code Joan Blondell on Blu-ray, like Three on a Match and Night Nurse. Those would be amazing, Jeremy. Those would be Warner Archive. They've been getting more into pre-code, and now that they're ramping up their releases again, they're really starting to crank out some really deep cuts. Again, King Solomon's Mines. Just I can't believe they're doing it. Okay, cool. Chris talking about the Star Trek motion picture Matrix LD soundtrack, far better than the 4K meddling. The atmosphere is missing and surround less impressive on the remix. Yeah, because I've compared it to the DVD and Blu-ray, and it just amazed me how good that disc sounds. So yeah, that old Matrix track still for me that is the one that fills the room, especially on the iconic Jerry Goldsmith. I never know what you're supposed to call it, but the giant clanging noise in space when that comes on. Oh gosh, from the word go, as soon as the film starts, that is the version of the film that sonically just fills the room and makes you feel like you're out in the void of deep space. Let's see. Speaking of indie, have you seen Secret of the Incas? I haven't seen it in a long time. I know that Kino just put out a release of it that I want to check out. I don't know if it's like a super great. I know it's supposed to be like I think a newer master or scan, but I don't know if it's like I don't think it's a super top tier scan. It's probably got some baked in issues. Probably like their release of Doctor Cyclops, which was from a new scan as well. But yeah, Secret of the Incas is a huge indie influence visually as well as just being a similar sort of genre film. That's one of like the easy first ones to go to say, oh, I need to figure out what inspired indie, and then Secret of the Incas is like top of the list along with Republic Serials. Thunderbeam is our one hope for a proper Superman Blu-ray. Yeah, I would definitely, yeah. It would have to be somebody not in the Warner Studio realm. Oh gosh, what is your favorite William Whitney work? Oh man, that is well, I have not seen all of the Whitney English serials yet. I'm working my way through. That's what I'd like to. That's one of the projects I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see all of the Whitney English serials. So for now, it's still Captain Marvel. That's still my favorite. But I've absolutely adored all the ones I've seen so far. And then of course he directed serials on his own. But my favorite so far, just overall, is Captain Marvel still because that was the first Whitney English serial that I saw, and that was Captain Marvel was the one along with Flash Gordon that really firmly hooked me on serials. So that one's still my favorite. Uh, Houston's Moby Dick. Yes, I'm so mad at myself. I didn't get the Twilight Time release because that had the restoration trying to approximate the original desaturated Technicolor, and all the other versions have not really done that. So, unfortunately, that's a very expensive out of print Twilight Time disc now. But I'm hoping somebody else releases that again or takes another stab at it because I would really love to see that. I think that is a very underrated film. I think every Houston film is underrated, but I especially have great fondness for that and Moulin Rouge for trying to do something with color photography that was different and fighting Technicolor tooth and nail to do so. So I think those films need to have that preserved on home video. Horror Jacket has a lot of Crush, Lee's head floating in the darkness on my OLED. Yes, it's even worse looking at the archive Horror of Dracula. I was used to just seeing in 1080p, but looking at it upscaled to 4K on an OLED television is just like, whoa, this is yeah. This was definitely they had to they had to just get something out there, and they worked with a master that had baked in problems. And when you look at the BFI disc, it does have crushed blacks in it already. So in fixing the color, it unfortunately seems to have drawn a lot of that out or made it even more obvious. And it's just it's unfortunate that that's what they had to do, but thankfully they are aware of it and are working on at least trying to get something better out there. Love the indie comics, and of course, they haven't been reprinted. That kills me. I wish I didn't even know Dark Horse had done the omnibuses, but I started looking at them, and those things are going for hundreds of dollars on eBay. It's crazy how expensive they've gotten. I'm hoping that my biggest hope for Dial of Destiny actually is that they reprint the indie comics and they don't recolor them or something. That's the one thing I'm really hoping for. So hopefully the something gets announced for Dial of Destiny that they're going to reprint all the comics. Okay. I think I'm finally catching up with the chat. Okay, and he's talking about it's a mad, 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 mad world. Talking about impressive, and then obviously there are the places where it had to be patched together. Yes, and then with the directional dialogue still being there, that's yeah. I think that film's always going to be a patchwork, just for how the various elements have survived and different things. I'm amazed that we got the big Criterion Deluxe release, and I've still got my Laserdisc box set. Recently saw DeMille's Cleopatra and absolutely loved it. Yes, I do have the Blu-ray. I have it in my seemingly never-ending stack of films to rewatch. So I will bump that up because I've been wanting to rewatch it. I remember really loving it, and that's it's when I think of Cleopatra films, that's still that may be my go-to overall for probably still perhaps being the best Cleopatra film. I don't think the 60s Cleopatra is as bad as people make it out to be, and all people want to talk about is the box office flop status. And it's like, well, look at everything that's on the screen. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and a lot of blood and a lot of tears in that. But yeah, the 34 version with Claudette Colbert is really something. So yeah, I'm going to watch that on Blu-ray pretty soon, and hopefully do a review as well. Are you a fan of the Fleischer era Popeye cartoons? Yes. The Warner Archive sets are the way to go. They are beautiful. There's I think it's 3 volumes. So that is the way to go, and that's how I think everybody wishes the Fleischer Supermans had turned out. And had the archive gotten to do it, it would have. Uh, Crossing my fingers, hoping Criterion will do a Godzilla Heisei era set, especially since some of the films that were on BD are going out of print. That's possible. I guess it's just up to Criterion, and again, they have this habit of licensing stuff and then sitting on it until like 10 or 15 years later, almost, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're putting this out, and by that time, you've even forgotten that they were rumored to have rights to something. Uh, Scorsese once said, "If you missed it at the cinema, the next best was Laserdisc." Yeah, I have to console myself sometimes when I miss something at an art house due to just scheduling or availability, or like when I saw the BFI Film Festival. It's like, well, at least I can watch my LD copy, and then it was mastered directly from an Element, and I get like I get a little part of the theatrical experience. Oh, Ian's here. Hello. Managed to acquire the Criterion LD of the Third Man. That's one that perplexes me. That the Third Man has not been perfected on home video. That Studio Canal Blu-ray is the only release of the 4K restoration, and while the picture is better, that mono track is a hot mess, and the best sounding audio that anybody's found is actually the old Criterion 1999 DVD. So I went and got a copy of that used, and sure enough, it is. That still blows my mind that no one's done the Third Man on UHD, and that Studio Canal made such a really crummy mono for their new restoration. So I'm hoping that whoever does the UHD release, I don't know if Criterion will try and get the rights again, but whoever does it properly, because the Third Man having any issue is just like, oh no. The best I've ever seen it, I have seen it. I have seen a print of it, and it was amazing. So that's what I always keep in my mind's eye, is what how I remember it being. One of the rarest Blu-rays I own is the Blue Max. The teal wash is appalling. At least the sound is good. Yeah, that's you talk about Fox catalog titles in HD, it's Teal City. That was their thing for a while. Why? Nobody knows, but it's unfortunately there. It's not there on older releases, but they don't have the same technical merits of newer scans. So, Blue Max would be one. Death Set is another. The Marilyn Monroe films, The King and I. Although King and I actually did get a newer master without that. Although I think that's just been put out on streaming, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, that was really unfortunate. And now with the Disney buyout, it's those films are not going to get new scans or masters anytime soon. So unfortunately, they're still stuck that way. Matthew says, I watched your Fu Manchu serial review and I would recommend reading Sex Rumor. Yeah, I'm finally going to. I've wanted to for some time because I always read about how big of an influence Romer was on Fleming. And of course, me being the Bond nerd that I am, I want to go and read all of the Fleming influences. And of course, I think it's common knowledge that Dr. No was in a lot of ways very much a nod to Fu Manchu and the Romer stories and being a bit more obviously an adventure story. So I've been wanting to. I've just held off because for a while there were no reprints. So and also the inherent racism in the books and things. And so I was kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to read that if they're really that terrible. I'll get around to it eventually, and then that just more time passes. So now that I've been looking at some of the different adaptations and things, I really want to. So I'm going to start picking up some of the Titan reprints, and they reprinted all the novels. So I'm just going to pick up a few and start in chronological order. And I can already tell, just from excerpts and reading up on them, just how enormously influential they are. But of course, you do have to go in, and I know it's going to be like other things I've read from that era where it's like, oh wow, this is an interesting, oh dear, yes, that's okay, yes, yeah, okay, yes. So the cringe factor will definitely come into play for certain elements for sure, but I'm finally gonna start reading those. What do you think the chances are for a nice RKO Astaire and Rogers film release? Hi Gloria, thanks for commenting. I think that would be Warner Archive again. Criterion picked up Swing Time for Blu-ray, and of course they had done it on Laserdisc before. So I don't know if they got UHD rights as well, but I would assume Warner Archive would be doing the Astaire Rogers films one at a time, like they did the Thin Man's and other series. And then once they did all of them, they might do like a multi-film collection like they did with the Bogart and Bacall films and some of the film noir Blu-rays. I would assume it would probably be something like that in terms of what's the most feasible. And then of course you get the Criterion Swing Time for its extras and things. And then I don't know if they'd still include that in the Warner Archive set. They might, because they've shared stuff with Criterion too. But my guess would be it would just be Warner Archive doing the films individually on Blu-ray like they did with the Thin Mans and doing amazing new scans, which would be great because they do need them. The DVDs are solid, but they're getting on up there in age. And then of course being Warner DVDs, they I didn't find any instances, major instances of them hitting having the Warner disc rot. But once I discovered how widespread that was, I'm just like any Warner held film. I'm like, please get it out on Blu-ray sooner rather than later, because you don't want that sinking feeling of putting in a DVD a couple years later and being so excited to watch something again, and then oh my disc, God, oh no. So, yeah, thankfully that mine of the Astaire Rogers films are still okay, but yeah, I really hope they start doing archive Blu-rays of those. I'm sure they will because they're going to be major sellers, and of course are so beloved and popular. But I think Criterion just swooped in there and grabbed Swing Time again, so the rest will be Warner Archive. Let's see. Which other biographies or books about classic Hollywood can you recommend? Bought Bogart thanks to you and liked it. Oh, cool. Glad you liked it. That is still the definitive bogey tome. Um, Off the top of my head, I would say anything by well, the easiest ones, anything by Joseph McBride. His Frank Capra book is essential. I loved his John Ford book too. Um, and his recent Billy Wilder book was great. His Lubitsch book was phenomenal. Then anything by Scott Imond. He just had the recent Cary Grant biography. Um, and he's done so many great biographies of so many people, so you can't go wrong with him either. James Curtis has done many great biographies. He did the great James Whale biography. I'm rereading his book on William Cameron Menzies, which is fantastic, and then he's done a Buster Keaton book, which is a must. um, Gosh, there's so many. I really love the Robert Mitchum biography, "Baby, I Don't Care," of course. What else are you gonna call it? Which I think was Lee Server, if I'm remembering correctly. That's a phenomenal biography. Um, Anything by Patrick McGilligan. I think his Hitchcock biography, Life in Darkness and Light, is the best Hitchcock book there is. That's the one I always recommend to people if they just want one Hitchcock book or they want the one good Hitchcock biography. That is, I think, the best one overall. So yeah, I'd try those, and then just kind of go from there, and then just do what I do and just sort of go from one weird connection to another and another and another. And if you find a biographer you really like, look at what else they've done. And usually they've done, anywhere from like 3 to 10 other great film biographies. They're re-releasing the IMAX DNR Raiders of the Lost Ark digital with revisionist color timing. I saw the limited theatrical screenings for Raiders this past week, and I figured they would just be running the 4K master. So if they're redoing that IMAX version they did of the Blu-ray master, that would be really weird. I don't know how that 4K master, what's on the UHD, would look like on the big screen, because already on the UHD you can see a lot of compression noise, and it does have some weirdness going on. But the thing that kills me on those is all the effects shots being recomposited and redone. That really kills me that they did that. It's not extraordinarily obvious to most people, and it's not necessarily changing them across the board, but it is going in there and reworking them and erasing matte lines and doing some weird tweaks and things, and in some instances causing things to suddenly be weird and or stretched. It's so weird. And so just, even just scrubbing through the trilogy on UHD and noticing, okay, now when they open the Well of the Souls, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. There's some weirdness when they go into the opening temple where the sequence was damaged or something. It's always looked a little weird. They recomposited the plane crash in Temple of Doom. They erased matte lines on all the matte shots, and now they kind of look weird in Temple. They did some similar stuff in Last Crusade, and I'm like, why? These are supposed to be a little bit dirty because they're like a serial, especially Raiders, because it was shot so fast. So that stuff really bugs me, and I don't know how that will look blown up to a theater screen. I would hope and assume the DCP of a 4K, the 4K DCP wouldn't have the same compression issues of the UHD, but it's Paramount, so I don't know. And then it'll have the newest Atmos remix, which is the Blu-ray Ben Burt remix of Raiders, tamed down in terms of the LFE being less crazy, but the effects are now spread out even more because you've got Atmos to play with, and they're like, "Ooh, we can spread this here and we can spread this here," and I'm just sitting there like, you've basically torn the whole mix apart and thrown things everywhere. Yeah, it's the same material, but the music levels are different, and the music almost sounds, I mean, it almost sounds canned in places, even though it's technically more detailed. The high end just sounds weird, and it feels dulled in comparison to the older presentations. I mean, I'm going to go in at great length when I talk about the home video history, but I have to do a whole special video just on this guy right here because I've posted about it and talked about it many times. Whatever the source is they used for this Matrix track, this is the finest sounding version of Raiders I've ever heard. This is the one that makes my neighbors run for the hills, and nothing compares to this guy. Whatever it was, whether it was the abandoned Vista Sonic mix, whether it was indeed a home video remix, that we just don't know what this 1992 audio presentation is. But even though it's not discrete, this is the best sounding version of Raiders there is, and they now have Atmos to play with. And again, while it's not as crazy in your face as the Blu-ray presentation was, and it's based on that, it's still, they've just messed around with it even more, and I'm just like, what are you doing? There's no need for any of this. So I'm sure that would drive me even crazier in a theater. Let's see. Hooray TV 21 asks, what are your thoughts on the limited nature of mini discs? I've grown tired of the speculative nature of many releases, preying on fear of missing out for limited releases. Yeah, that's unfortunate. There are many times where you do feel that, and you're like, oh crap, I need to go ahead before it's gone, or you put it off too long and then you miss out on it. I wish that, I mean, releasing entities put more effort into getting things right, and to, actually make it worthwhile. And, not everyone is like that, of course, but the vast majority is just, viewed more as making and selling products, as opposed to, this is also in some fashion preserving works of art. So yes, it's the meaning of art and commerce, but you also have to do your due diligence to make sure that you get stuff right. And especially if you're going to charge a lot of money and do limited releases and things, well, take the extra 5 minutes across the board to make sure you do stuff correctly, and go and double check that your audio source isn't junk. And if you get provided with something that's not good, actually, call the studio back and say, hey, this isn't right. We need to see about fixing this. What do you guys have? What can we do? Put the extra effort in. Okay, Matthew's still talking about the Fu Manchu novels. They're an easy read and are good. The racism, while there, is more of a background setting and isn't necessarily hateful per se, just more of a worldview. And they also will show a lot of respect for Asian culture, etc. Okay, that I was hoping there was some of that. Yeah, I run into that sometimes as well, when even talking about Fleming's Bond novels, particular ones more than others, where people want to highlight the more dated aspects, is the easiest way to put it. Um, but you've got to make sure not to put the cart before the horse, because that's not what the whole book is about. And obviously that was reflective of the person writing the work at that place and time, which also means that you shouldn't go and change it decades after the fact. And that gets into the whole 70th anniversary rollout, and the Ian Fleming publications censoring the Bond novels and things. And unfortunately that seems to have not gone away, and we're going to be stuck with that for the time being, unfortunately. Let's see. Oh, cool. Ian got the Star is Born Warner Archive disc. Excellent. I hope you enjoy that. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous disc, and they are giving that away at such a low price. Let's see. Mallrats getting a 4K release soon. Wonder if Kevin Smith is open to making new restorations or transfers for his other films. I would think so. I would hope so. I haven't seen a lot of all the various disc releases, but I know that a lot of his films are kind of stuck in older masters that aren't necessarily the greatest. Oh, cool. Professor Who got just ordered the 1992 Japanese Laserdisc of the Third Man the other day. Awesome. The 96 was pretty crummy on the audio side, and this one probably is too, but I won't know till it arrives. Yes. You know my pain. Yes. Ordering or purchasing obscure releases of films just to check their audio track, and knowing that they're probably going to suck, but you have to do it anyway because nobody else does this stuff. That is me, unfortunately, all the time. And now I purchased too many random releases of catalog films simply to check their audio track, and I find myself buying random tapes now all the time going, "Oh, well, it's 99 cents. I've never checked this. Ah, screw it. I need to check the audio anyway." And then I have to go home, and then I have to just hook my VCR up, and then I have to do another audio capture, or I do another laserdisc audio capture because I found some obscure pressing, like you finding that Japanese copy. So yes, I know exactly what that pain is like. Chris was very impressed with Criterion's Detour. Yes, Back from the Dead, indeed. That film was, it's probably the most iconic Poverty Row classic film, and it's an Edgar G. Ulmer masterpiece. And yeah, seeing it for years in just god awful versions, I am still astonished it finally got restored. That is an amazing, amazing restoration. Oh gosh, your seventh victim, Warner DVD was a rotter. Yeah, if you do start, I started picking up the individual ones because the box was out of print. So it's, yeah, you usually have more luck with the Warner rotted DVDs if you go for individual releases, because apparently they were pressed at a different plant that didn't have the same manufacturing issues. It's not 100% thing, and of course somebody could always just take their box set copy out and sell it or whatever, and then you're double screwed. But or just get the laserdisc box again, even though you sold your copy. I'm sorry. It's the same master for Seventh Victim. I mean, most of the DVDs, except for Cat People, really, and Curse, were the LD masters just carried over, which is why they all needed upgrades really bad. So hopefully Warner Archive gets to do Seventh Victim, but it's possible Criterion picked that up too, along with I Walked with the Zombie, and decided to sit on them for all eternity and drive us crazy wondering. Um, I'm not bitter, am I? So fingers crossed it happens. Personally, I would love to do them myself because I mean, there's not one that's absolutely perfect yet. The closest are the Warner Archive discs. Their Isle of the Dead and Bedlam are pretty much perfect. Although I would like their audio to be better, and I hope they reissue the Ghost Ship with the Moth issue fixed. Although apparently the UK version that just came out already has that fix, so they haven't said anything about doing a disc repressing here. The Popeye Blu-rays did what the Superman should have done: get the audio negatives. Yes, yeah. The fact that on the Fleischer Superman release that Warner just re I guess they reused the DVD audio source, or I would hate to think that they did some sort of new audio scan and then conformed it to the DVD audio. That would be even worse. But yeah, the fact that all the errors are still there plus some new ones, that is nuts. I mean, you would think they just copied the DVD audio, but they did work on it because it has been worked on at things. But yeah, that's still just, yeah, it should have been done from scratch, as you say. Universal should release Earthquake again with limited mod 2 boxes for the original Sensurround. That would be amazing. That would be fantastic. I do have the Pan and Scan LD, which has the control tones and stuff. So I don't know if anybody could ever rebuild the the Sensurround decoder box like 3D and do like a 3D printed version. That would be amazing, just for those of us who have the old Pan and Scan LD to decode it. So I think that would be the only way that would happen. And every time they've tried to do sensor round on later releases, it's just they just throw some booms at it. Like the letterboxed LD of Earthquake. I remember when I first threw it on, it just basically made my subwoofer go whoa during all the scenes. It was just like one continuous, somebody just put, just consistent noise straight across. So, it's just like, oh no, it's the earthquake. And it just doesn't stop. It just nonstop keeps going. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's accurate either, guys. So it was kind of funny. Let's see. He should write a book on movies. I would buy it, but I would want it signed by you. Oh gosh. I feel like I should write a book actually. Of course, with self-publishing, it's a lot easier nowadays, but I don't know what subject I'd choose. I'd feel like it would be just a never-ending amount of written material and many volumes. Chris says the 1938 Pygmalion film is a masterpiece. Which Criterion would do an upgrade? Yeah, I just have the Criterion LD, but that would be a lovely upgrade. Ian saw the Raiders 4K DCP, and it was a massive improvement over the Blu-ray. Yeah, it's definitely better in the color timing. It's not perfect, I don't think, but they definitely got rid of the horrible color timing of the 2012 master, and they did tame the audio mix, but they also tweaked it further because they got to play in Atmos. So yeah, it's if they hadn't messed with the effect shots, I could recommend it, but that's the part that really gets me, that they mess with the effect shots in all 3 films, and I'm just like, "No, you don't do that. You just no." But then again, I admit I was miffed about the removal of the snake reflection in the well of the soul. So I wasn't happy with the Raiders DVD just because that, and the removal of the boulder rod in the opening. The very minor tweaks that only nerds like to grumble about. So but again, I'm a purist. I admit it, but yeah, in terms of color timing, it is a massive improvement. Oh, cool. Clay's got a nearby theater showing a print of Raiders. Awesome. I hope it's an original print because that when I got to see it, it was unfortunately the Blu-ray master on a print, and that's how I first saw that master. That was about it was about 2 or 3 months at least. It was definitely before the Blu-ray came out. It was before the IMAX showings, and I'm sitting there at I think it was like a noon screening on a Saturday because they usually did their weekend classics at noon. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, something is weird here, and just in the opening jungle, and just seeing what the color timing was like, and they had advertised it as a new print, and it was pristine. But I'm sitting there going, "What in the world is going on?" And then I see the skin tones, and then especially when you get to the college, and then most of all when we get to Cairo, I'm just like, "Whoa, what is this?" Um, so yeah, that was the last time I saw any sort of indie printed material, and unfortunately, since then it's been few and far between that you can see an indie print. So definitely go, because that's becoming a rarer opportunity. Couldn't believe we're getting Battlestar Galactica and both the movie and the original TV series in 4K, but we have no original Star Wars trilogy. It's a stranger's world. Yes. Yes, well, unfortunately, we don't technically have a 100% original indie trilogy either, unfortunately. So, it is a strange world. I can make that case for many different films. We don't have the Bond films on 4K releases either, but yeah, it seems like a no-brainer at this point that we can't just have the original Star Wars trilogy properly released, and especially if the Battlestar Galactica movie gets its mono Sensurround track, because that was Sensurround in the final sort of mono iteration, and that's never been actually ported over. That would be amazing if that happened. It's like, well, really, there should be Star Wars and an unaltered release on the UHD format if Battlestar Galactica the movie can get its Sensurround track. Jason writes top 5 LFE channel workouts in AC3 LDs. Ooh, Jason, that is a good question. Just talking about LFE and discrete tracks. Well, see, I'd want to toss DTS in there because that, then you can talk about Jurassic Park, and I can talk about the Shadow. Because if I talk about the Shadow mix, I can go for hours. But if we're just talking about LFE, Long Kiss Goodnight has some real that's a gorgeous, brilliant workout of a mix. And the AC3 and DTS are the same mix. So the DTS is much more powerful, but it's the same mix, the same transfer. So that's an easy recommendation. Uh, I of course I adore the Tomorrow Never Dies mix. That's my favorite 5.1 mix of all time, so I can easily say that one. The GoldenEye AC3, the club mix of GoldenEye on Laserdisc, that one with the very boomy, very intensive LFE. That's a hotter LFE track. Some people thought it was a mistake, but I think it was just how theatrical AC3 was at the time, where Dolby was trying to compete with DTS, and they had usually a hotter LFE track. So that one, and of course, the Mission Impossible AC3, which is another of my all-time favorite mixes. The Laserdisc is the only release with the theatrical base intact because all the later releases have tamed it down. The Laserdisc is the way to go, and if there was one single truly important Laserdisc AC3 track for preserving the original theatrical audio that is not anywhere else, it's actually Mission Impossible because of that extra LFE. And I have seen a print of it in an art house, and it did have it, which is how I was able to finally confirm, yes, that is how it was theatrically, because it is night and day. The opening title theme that Danny Elfman did, that has crazy amounts of low end in it, not on any other version. But all you have to do is go to that or the aquarium restaurant. And when the glass breaks and the wall of water comes out towards the screen, that's when, if you have neighbors who don't like it when you have a really boomy movie, will make their voice heard very quickly. So I would say those among many others. Paramount's gonna Paramount. Yeah. I feel like I need that on a sign or on shirt somewhere. Warner's gonna Warner. Paramount's gonna Paramount. Neighbors of the Lost Ark. Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, I think neighbors know they're in for a time when I run a laser disc with that starts with sound logos, Dolby logo, Dolby City, THX logo, DTS, and I never run things too loud or anything, but I like to joke about it a little bit here and there, but I try not to annoy anybody, but there are some times where you just need to go, I'm happier now. Are you looking forward to any of the University of Kentucky Press Screen Classics that releases this fall? Yes, I'm always looking forward to any University of Kentucky film books, but usually I can't afford them until I find them on sale somewhere. But anytime I see their logo on any book, I'm like, yes, I have to read this. Okay, Andy talking about Raiders having both the Laserdisc and the DVD, but prefers the Dolby Stereo Matrix, packs an Indie Punch. Yes, that's the one for me. The DVD 5.1 of Raiders is supposed to be based on the 70 millimeter mix. That was always the information that goes around, and it sounds great, and it doesn't have any new effects or anything. So I'm sure that's probably what it was done from, but it does not have the same intensity as the Matrix Laserdisc audio. I mean, it just does not. I think the three best sounding versions are the 1992 Laserdisc, the DVD 5.1, and then the pre 92 copies that all seem to have the original Dolby Stereo mix. So that's the Pan and Scan LDs, the Japanese LDs, and of course the VHS tape, which I grew up with. So I grew up not knowing that I was listening to the Dolby Stereo mix, and later on over the years, I started noticing that the sound felt a little different, and I just chalked it up to nostalgia. But then actually going and looking at stuff again, and actually playing my old tape again, and then actually decoding it and matrixing it back out, and then it's like, oh, I was actually hearing something. So yeah, that's another example of where an old tape like mine's I think it was 1989, but it's still got the Dolby Stereo mix. It sounds fantastic. All of this sound better than the UHD and the Blu-ray for sure. Oh, Mike's here. Hello, Mike. Thanks for dropping in. Thanks, Mark. Flavors of the Lost Ark. Not sure if they agree with the cast while shooting. Yeah. Yeah, all you have to do is read about the massive dysentery outbreak for the cast and crew of Raiders while they were shooting. That's not pleasant for anybody. I love the fact that the anecdote that why Spielberg didn't get sick is because he just imported endless amounts of cans of SpaghettiOs. That's always stuck with me. That's one of my all-time favorite anecdotes. What's a must-have title you're hoping for in the future? One of mine is Night Must Fall, which I hope will get the archive treatment. But my other must-have was Fleischer Superman. Yeah, the Fleischer Superman was my number one archive hoped for. I'm happy whenever the archive releases anything. Actually, my own personal wish list would include, and it would definitely include Captain Blood, Gunga Din, Prisoner of Zenda. Gosh, there's so many. The other Luton films, if Criterion isn't sitting on them, I would say Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, but apparently Criterion is also sitting on that because they like to sit on things. But yeah, gosh, there's so many. I'm so happy whenever they release anything. Really ecstatic. They're getting back up to their normal sort of release schedule of doing more releases. Oh, Elva's there. Hello. Yeah, we did kind of talk about network suddenly going defunct. It's still such a shame because they had so many titles and things that were just no one else had released. So I hope that stuff isn't going to get tied up for a long time. If you could resurrect lost films, which would you want to do? I'd die to see Lubitsch's The Patriot in its full length, or any lost Lubitsch for that matter. Fully agreed. Yes. Um, oh gosh, there's so many of those. Mm, well, the number one is Ambersons. I mean, that's the one. Yes, we all want to see Greed complete. We'd all like to find London After Midnight, whether it's a good film or not. We'd still want to find it. So many films that got chopped up or don't exist in their full length versions or were compromised in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, that's a whole long list, but Ambersons is the one that reigns supreme for me. The one where it's like if I had access to a time machine, one stop would definitely be the actual the former Fleischer studio in Florida and grab that work print of Ambersons when Orson left to go back to South America. Before it got shipped back to RKO and presumably destroyed, or literally track it and then figure out where it went and just get it on said time machine and bring it back here before people knew what had happened, and just leave a little piece of paper that says swear it was destroyed, don't ask questions. That would be the one for me. Earthquake on the Blu-ray, the LFE goes bonkers, and my two dogs are over cover. Yeah. Yeah, Sensurround for was not designed for canine ears, I don't think. Okay. Phantom Menace is amazing on Laserdisc, best mix on any version. 1000% agreed. Yes. Um, I hate that they used all kinds of early noise reduction and stuff on the picture, it seems. But of course, that film is stuck as an early digital intermediate anyway. And none of the versions look very good, but that is still the theatrical cut. It is in widescreen, and the only way to see the theatrical cut on an official release is on VHS, letterbox VHS, or the Japanese LD. So that is the best option. And the Japanese LD has the Dolby EX 5.1 theatrical audio, which is the one that is still demo quality to this day. All you have to do is throw on the pod rays and if you have EX or 7.1, that pops out perfectly, and you see people's eyes just go like this, and it's like, yeah, this is why I have a laser disc player. That's one of the easy discs. Don't look at how weird the picture quality looks and the fact that it's got hard coded Japanese subtitles on the bottom. Just ignore that. It's fine. It's part of the experience. um that is an essential LD, but it's a little trickier to find nowadays, but it's still essential just for that darn audio track. That audio is amazing. And yeah, none of the other versions sound as good. Mission Impossible so abundant on Laserdisc. I have 3 copies. Yes. Well, don't worry about not having a decoder because the matrix audio still has the theatrical bass in it because um, of course the print I saw was 5.1 and unfortunately had some dropouts where it switched over to the SR. That still has it. And if you play back, if you have a decoder, you can compare the two. That low end bass impact is still there on the matrixed audio. So you're actually not missing out. And again, that didn't carry over as well. So yeah, if you're just listening to Matrix PCM surround, you're still getting the theatrical audio. Do you have a favorite film from the 2010s or 2020 so far? That's a tough question because my gut reaction is actually no. I admit my focus is so uh, feverishly on catalog titles that I kind of only sporadically watch more modern stuff. There are some films that I do really love, but most of them are from the early 2000s, like especially films like City Lumet's last feature, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. That's a masterpiece, but that's of course 2007. That's getting old. Jeez. Oh boy, I used to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I've got a couple," but now we're in the 2020s, and my usual go-to answers are all like 2007, 2009, and I'm like, "Dang it, I can't use those anymore." So I need to dig around further and see some more stuff and see if I can't come up with a more modern sort of top 10. Yes, the MI2 LaserDisc is way out of pretty much everybody's price range. That is an ultimate LaserDisc Flex title that is pure unobtainium late release Japanese exclusive. Let's see, Justin asks any affordable options for decoding AC3 LDs. It's a little hard because the trick is finding a decoder. That's the thing. Just you have to keep an eye out for, or I should say demodulator, not decoder. You have to keep an eye out for any sort of demodulator because they appeared in different flavors. So you don't have to specifically get a separate standalone one. What I did was I wound up I had a Yamaha DDP-1, which was the first modulator, but it's a giant box that spits out 6 RCA outputs. And I wanted something that gave me that stayed digital because modern receivers usually don't have analog ends anymore for whatever silly reasons. Um, so what I did is I got one of the Sony sound processors that has built-in demodulation. So I just used that as a pass-through just for AC3, and I found it at a Goodwill for $10. So they're out there. Mine, it's really beat up. The display doesn't work. I had to dust it off and then realize, hey, wait, is this what I think it is? So on some things like that, you have to actually look at the model and then look at the actual labels and look at the back. And you can get an old receiver from the 90s sometimes that'll still have it, or early 2000s. Basically, any piece of 90s gear that has LaserDisc labels on it that was higher end. Sometimes you can get lucky and find something like that for cheap that has demodulation. But if you're wanting something to just plug into your system, I think the sound processors are the best bet for a cheaper alternative. So the Sony ones, Technics had one, Pioneer had some. The only thing is, not all of them are digital. Most of them are going to spit out multiple analog outputs. So you got to make sure that you get one. And if your receiver has analog inputs, you're fine. But if you don't have multi analog in, you got to make sure to find one like I did and get like the Sony that actually spits out an optical signal. Okay. You've likely already talked about this, but how do you go about finding out who owns the rights to a given film? Like, how do you know what Criterion is sitting on? A lot of forum reading and talking with people and trying to read between the lines, and then hoping you can randomly remember this stuff. That's pretty much it, actually. And then also figuring out which studio has the controlling rights and which entity, and then who they like to work with. So you can kind of figure out, okay, well, that's with Warner. So if the archive doesn't do it, the studio label's not going to care about it because it's a deeper catalog title. So if the archive doesn't do it, it's possible Criterion will do it at some time because they have a good relationship. Or if it's an MGM film, There's a good chance Kino will do it because they license a ton from MGM. So you can usually kind of figure out a general sort of an idea of the realistic possibility of who's going to do a release if it does happen, simply by looking at who actually owns and controls the film and what labels they work with if they're not going to do it themselves. But um, otherwise, like with stuff that Criterion is rumored to have, it's all just rumors. But the more you hear people discuss it, the longer it goes, and like the Warner Archive doesn't release it, then yeah, it's probably just sitting in the Criterion we haven't gotten around to it closet. Someone should be able to build a modulator today from Arduinos and Raspberry Pis. Yeah, you would think that it's possible. Or maybe even just a plug-in. Like, I don't know if it would be possible to just have like an actual custom designed plug-in in audio software to be able to just do a pass through or be able to capture LaserDisc AC3. Oh, I swear, just when I think I got caught up, the text just jumped. Yes, definitely grab the Phantom Menace LD, Justin. Yes, it is fantastic. Chronically Online, you mean you don't like The Last Jedi? Yeah. I try to ignore Disney Wars, I saw the 3 main ones theatrically, I've seen some of the shows, and I'm like, Okay, you made stuff. Don't I wouldn't necessarily call it Star Wars, and, would have appreciated if you didn't murder the EU overnight and then cherry pick random ideas out of context from the EU that you murdered, which was the heart of Star Wars, but that's just my opinion, So that's me putting it very politely and succinctly. That's just how I kind of look at it. EU forever. Let's see. Which famous director have you not seen a single film from? In my case, it's Kurosawa. Um, I don't know. I would. It would probably be someone from world cinema because I will admit I never have watched as many world cinema titles as I would like to. I'm not as experienced as, say, Martin Scorsese, who seems to have seen everything known in existence. And I'm always wanting to beef up more on seeing so many different films from other countries. But my focus is so deeply on the studio era and classic Hollywood catalog titles that I hardly have time for anything else. But that's all what I always feel is my sort of blind spot that I want to be more up on. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm caught up now. Let's see. Saw Star Wars and SDDS. It was amazing for the 97 special editions. Yeah, I'm still sad I never got to experience SDDS as far as I'm aware. I wish I had been older in the 90s so I could have more appreciated the digital sound format wars and all the amazing soundtracks. I mean, I certainly felt it, and I certainly started taking notice of this stuff and the sound logos and the different theaters, the different halls. But I wish I had been old enough to be able to start digging into this stuff back then more. And so I wish I'd been able to be in an SDDS theater with a real 8-channel mix. But yeah, the 97 mixes, I still stick up for those because those are really phenomenal mixes for giving you that fun factor of a 90s multi-channel mix and being so aggressive, but also outside of the new CG sequences and things and the specific changes, they were rather faithful to the original source mixes and did use mono mix elements for Star Wars and Empire and threw those in there to try and make them a bit more overall not necessarily definitive, but at least try to create something that had some of the mono mix elements that were supposed to be definitive. So I still really love those mixes. They're not 100%, archivally minded. They are 90s 5.1 mixes, but that was the last time the trilogy ever sounded good. The Laserdisc AC3 still sounds phenomenal. And I think it's a shame the 97 versions never got another wide release after LD and VHS because for all the complaints thrown against them, the succeeding three special editions are increasingly worse, and especially in their sound mixes. Never forget or forgive. Sorry, the murder of the Star Wars expanded universe. Yes. Delay in YouTube chat sucks for live streams. Yes, it does. I'm amazed I finally caught up. I just hopped on tonight because I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna be around. I don't have a set topic, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And holy crap, we're already over 2 hours. Dang, wow. I hope you guys are enjoying me just responding to trying to keep up with the chat box. Um, if you could travel back in time and undo one restoration of a film, what would it be and why? How would you go about doing the restoration? Oh boy, man, you guys are hitting me with all kinds of great questions, and I have to just give one answer. And I'm like, how do I do just one? Um, I mean, I would want to, undo the bastardization of the Star Wars original trilogy. I would want to do the Indiana Jones films myself. I would want to do so many films myself, but it would be to undo the Lowry masters of the James Bond films. That's it. That's the one that that's the one that cemented all this stuff for me. And we're still dealing with the stupid problems of those that date back to the 2006 Ultimate Edition DVDs in both picture and sound transfers. So that's just the one that's most personal to me. If I could do anyone's entire body of work, start to finish, from scratch across the board, I think it goes without saying that I would do the Sergio Leone canon, because every single one of them is screwed up in some way and continues to be screwed up. Um, some are easier to fix than others. None of them are without issues, and I'm really afraid of what, because now we both have Once Upon a Time in the West coming from Paramount on a 4K release, and I'm terrified of what's going to happen there. Even more so, Kino has announced they're doing DocuSucker as a 4K UHD title, and I don't know what source they're going to use. I'm sure the audio is still going to be a mess with the censored dialogue and incorrect music cues that MGM caused. And you've got multiple versions of the film there. There already are two masters that are problematic as heck in for different reasons, and the audio is still a mess. The edit is still screwed up. So I mean that film is cursed in its releases. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. And I'm like, yeah. So if I could do any one particular example, it would be the Bond films, and just make sure the Lowry stuff never happened and do it all myself. And if I could do anyone's entire body of work, it would be all of Leone's films. The only one that's not screwed up is Colossus of Rhodes on the Warner Archive release. The problem there, it's the US cut only. And the longer Italian version is on an HD master in Europe, but it's got hideous color grading. So, yeah, that's why I've never imported that. So, even Colossus of Rhodes, the only good available version is the archive scan of the US cut, which is from not original negative and significantly shorter. So it is what it is. And I'm like, doggone it. That's the best we've got. Oh, thanks for hanging out, Chris. Doing some sort of tour, collection tour would be amazing. Yeah. I definitely should do something with my other formats. I've just got so many. Just like, how the heck can I do all of them? Because I love tour videos as well, but I always want to talk more about releases and things. So that's why I started by doing my laser discs in sections, so I could just talk about each one a little bit. So I guess I should start doing that with my other formats. I don't know if and when I'll ever finish, but that way I can at least sort of do the same thing for DVDs and Blu-rays at least. Yeah, streaming is a great source for thoughts on things you wouldn't otherwise have time to talk about. Yeah, it helps me get things out in at least more bite-sized, digestible pieces, or at least I could do it in real time. Because otherwise, I think about it too much, and then I'm like, oh, well, I need to write a bunch of notes. I need to do some research. I need to do this, and then I need to edit it and get all kinds of images, and then I give myself way too much work to do. So, um, would Lucas's sequels have been better than Disney's? Yes. To be honest, I think they would have been. I don't think everyone would have agreed that they were, but I've never had a problem with the prequels in terms of what they were trying to do from a foundational standpoint, because at their core they were achieving the building block goals of being prequels to the original trilogy, and they were not sort of going off the rails from being Star Wars at their core, being, still identifiably Star Wars, even though everything else was different. It's the fact that they needed additional writing. They needed more drafts of the script. They needed to be fine tuned. They needed to be honed further. They just don't feel like they were properly developed. And then you have the push for digital technology and all the other stuff that people like to go on about. That's fine. That's understandable. But I don't think there's a problem with the core foundation of them, which is my problem first and foremost with the Disney stuff, which doesn't really feel like Star Wars itself. So I do think that even if they had the same problems as the prequels, or perhaps even magnified some issues in the prequels, I do think had Lucas actually made sequel films, even at this late date, that they would have been, at least for me, at least I hopefully would have felt more at their core like a Star Wars film, as opposed to whatever Disney wants to do. So that's just sort of my gut reaction. And then reading about the various little tidbits that have come out of what some of the ideas behind them were, and what some of his developments and treatments were like that he gave to Disney and thought they were going to use. It feels at least better than what Disney has done to me, but without being able to actually read the materials myself, I can only guess. But that's just my sort of gut reaction, how I think about that. What I think it would be is that at the very least they would feel a bit more intrinsically Star Wars. So I would say yes, they would have been better. Hello, APR. Wonder what's holding up Warner from releasing Eyes Wide Shut and You on 4K. Yes, that is one of the number one films that looks nothing like what that film should look like. Yes, you got to see that. Yes, the 35 millimeter release print. It took me years to be able to see that. I wanted to see it when it came out. I was not old enough. I was a strange young child who was absolutely crushed that I couldn't go see Eyes Wide Shut, and I was 9, and I didn't care about the subject matter. Just because it was the last Kubrick film, and I had to see it theatrically, and I didn't, and I was crushed and destroyed. I of course understand why, but I also would read for years about the intensively colorful, thick grain, bold as all get out primary colors in the release prints that do not translate on the home video versions. I finally did get to see an original print, an original US print with the CGI figures and the orgy sequences and things. So it was an original 1999 US release print. It's one of the most gorgeous theatrical presentations I've ever seen in my life. It's not going to be for everybody. If you don't like film grain, oh boy, it's like a film grain lover's paradise. No video version looks like that. Some of the oldest versions, like the very early DVDs and the alternate aspect ratio and stuff, they kind of suggest it some, but even those don't. And obviously, being early DVDs, they don't get there. But I hate how the film looks on Blu-ray. It just looks, it has none, there's a warmth there because it's so much about the primary colors, but the grain structure and the deep, bold primary colors, it's just a whole other experience. So, as far as I know, they seem to be working on it for UHD, but I would assume it's a really tough film to transfer. And I don't know what they do in the HDR realm, because that is going to be one heck of a film to grade properly. And I don't know how you're going to do that in HDR with it being such a particular film for its look, its black levels, its color, and its intensive green structure. So that is one I hope happens. That is the number one Kubrick film on UHD I am looking forward to, even more so than Barry Lyndon, because at least with Barry Lyndon, the Criterion Blu-ray looks really good and has a great mono presentation and nice extras. It can be better on UHD, sure, but at least it resembles itself, which Eyes Wide Shut does not. And if they manage to do it right, and of course this is Warner, so that's not going to happen, unfortunately. It could be stunning. It could be a reference piece, but I hope it happens. But nothing has been announced as of yet. But yes, if you ever get the chance to see Eyes Wide Shut on an original release print, do whatever you have to, even if you don't like the film. It's a whole other experience, night and day, completely different to how it is on video. Dark Templar asking me about doing more commentaries. Only acceptable answer is yes, I will. Yes, I will indeed. I have so many that I want to do. It's just, as I said earlier, because somebody also asked about it. I've been wanting to do so many. The trouble is finding the time to set aside that you can. And I like to brush up on things first, and then I want to do even more research, and then the trouble is finding the time, preparing myself, and then trying to get over my nerves because it's so nerve-wracking to do. It's much easier if you have, several people in a room talking, but when it's just you and a microphone and the movie starts and you get a brain freeze and you're like, "Oh crap, what do I say? Oh crap." But yes, I definitely have several that I want to get done and get back to doing those. I don't know if it'll ever be as regular as it was. Doing all the Bond films was a real challenge. That was one I set for myself just because I wanted to do it, and I wanted to do something that at least got as much of my lifetime of Bond musings out there as I could. And a commentary seemed like the best idea because I could just talk nonstop or until my throat got dry. um, but yeah, I definitely have plenty more I'd like to tackle. Okay, let's see. I suppose should spook the hell out of you. Yeah. Well, that's good. It's supposed to do that in some ways. I also find it strangely warm, strangely funny at times. It's a film that has certain spooky elements. It's very unclassifiable, and I can't believe it took me so darn long. But the movie it reminds me of most, and it's never been said anywhere, and I've never heard Kubrick asked about this particular person. But the more I think about it, it seems obvious that you know he at least knew of Val Luton because you think about The Shining, and there's quite a bit of Luton influence there. But now when I look at Eyes Wide Shut, I can't not think of The Seventh Victim and realize that holy crap, this is the most intensively personal person going into the depths of New York and the depths of humanity film. That's a true New York film since The Seventh Victim. And you have a whole notion of a secret society of various people higher up in social standings in both films. And both films have a hypnotic, dreamlike atmosphere and a sense of dread and a sense of spookiness and horror throughout that makes it feel like a sort of nightmare instead of just a dreamlike landscape. And both have central characters that sort of go through this journey of darkness and a sort of personal discovery of themselves. So I totally link those films now. And now every time I think of Eyes Wide Shut, it's like, okay, there's so much of The Seventh Victim in here. It had to have been an influence. Maybe it's just me linking these two. I've seen it mentioned by another critic or two, maybe once or twice. So I know I'm not alone in thinking that. But I wish that had that been the case, that there was an interview or something somewhere where Cooper talked about Luton. But I link those films so closely in my mind now because they just have so many interesting similarities. What is the best Kubrick UHD that was released by Warner? Well, the most surprising was 2001 for actually bringing back a version of the original audio mix. That one was, I never thought the original audio of 2001 would ever see a video release again. Um, so that's probably the one. Then of course you have to get the corrected pressing for the fade error, but at least they fixed that. I'm amazed they did because Warner's gonna Warner. So that it's probably that for me. But of course, I wish other people were in charge of them so they could be absolutely perfect. But at least they're far better than the usual Warner screw ups. Although The Shining has a number of issues on the UHD and doesn't have the original audio, and Full Metal Jacket could be better and doesn't have the original audio. So it's like we can never win, but at least they're better than what came before, even though they still have issues. Let's see. Yeah, I'm the same. I've never seen 2001 in true 70 millimeter. The best I've seen it was I have seen a vintage 35 millimeter print, which did actually have the 2.21 ratio preserved. It wasn't in scope. I know Kubrick insisted on that on a lot of 35 millimeter prints. I don't think it was original, but it was beautifully preserved. But it didn't have the remixed audio, and even though it was just 35 millimeter, it was absolutely breathtaking to see. Hey Travis, thanks for dropping in. Really enjoyed your Bond content. Wanted to thank you for making this. Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, inspired you to finally do your prequel trilogy commentary. Awesome. Oh man, the prequels are always a great generation of discussion. Even if you don't like them, there are interesting things to study, and you can really go to town just analyzing the heck out of them. Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me about doing commentaries for the Craig films. I never was going to do them, and the thing is, since people have asked about it, I've thought about it, but I don't even know what I'd go into. I'd because I always want to try to do a critical commentary. So I always try to do films where I know I have enough material to go into, and I know enough background material because I don't know about you, I hate commentaries where there's so much dead space or people just describe on screen actions. So there's a lot of films I'd love to do, but I don't know if I could, fill a whole track full in terms of a commentary. But the Craig films are a special case. It would be like me trying to do a commentary track on Crystal Skull, where I'd be just like doing face palms and like cringing and going, oh, geez, oh, ow, oh, ow, it still burns, like the whole time. So I would find it very difficult to like stay on point and also try to be objective because that's such a personal thing for me. But I'm happy that everybody loves my other ones, and even thought about me doing them because I never I've never intended on doing them. I was just going to do the original films, and then I also threw in Casino Royale and Never Say Never Again because those are books about, you could write entire books about their production in and of themselves, and I love those films in spite of their strangeness. But I don't know. Maybe if I could figure out some way to somehow try and stay objective, but that would be the hardest challenge for any film for me to try and do an objective commentary for, especially No Time to Die. That would, oh boy, that I don't know how I'd make it through that again. But I definitely appreciate the kind words and thoughts. That means a lot. Uh, Yeah, Matthew, not a fan, yeah, of him either. So, it's nice to know I'm not alone in my undying hatred of them. But I don't begrudge people for liking or enjoying them. And he talking about what is Jaws like on the letterbox scope laser disc. Um, Well, Jaws, you always want the mono mix. I think that's one of the best mono mixes ever done. But weirdly, it's sort of it's not stayed the same. It has been tweaked a little bit here and there in terms of it doesn't sound the same on all the releases. The 2005 DVD that finally put it out on DVD, it sounds really good, but it's not the same as the signature LD mono. Like, it sounds a little different. I think it's EQ'd a little different. And then the mono track that's on the modern releases doesn't sound as good as either of those. So the signature Laserdisc mono is still the best one that I know of, and that's usually what I wind up rewatching. And if you go back to the previous releases with the partially rescored music, that's how I first saw the film. That's how I grew up with it. Universal replaced some of the source cues, but the levels aren't in the same balance. So some things are a little louder, some things are a little quieter. So that's one of those particular home video home video particular mixes of a film that was tied to it for a number of years. So that would be, and I think that should be preserved in some form. That was the one that sort of obscured the final climactic line a little bit. So if you remember that line in some versions, sounding a bit muffled or a little bit different, it's because that was in the partially rescored for home video version. So if you have the very first letterboxed LD, it's that mix on the digital track. So I've got that too, just for um, remembering how the film used to be, and it's super cheap. So I got it to compare to the signature LD, which is better in every way, but I still hung on to it for that home video remixed exclusive mono. Ethan says, "Have you checked out the archive release of Law and Jake Wade yet?" No, I've got that on my wish list. There's still so many archive Blu-rays that I haven't gotten yet. I've been wanting to get that because, as you say, John Sturges, and I'm a big Sturges fan, even though he doesn't get talked about him as much, and he's not as beloved by others. But I think his westerns, especially, are the strongest. And I've been wanting there. Gosh, there's so many archive discs I need to get. So my wish list is super massive, but I need to pick that up. Hooray Scene 2001 and 70 millimeter. Excellent. Yeah, that's the thing. As Travis points out, if you look at the Craig films, even somebody like me who can't stand them, I will definitely acknowledge that there is a clear line in the sand where when you get to the end of Skyfall, that's an exit point. That's an end point. Everybody was, for the most part, still behind them, even though I was the one voice in the theater dying internally. But even I would acknowledge, yeah, and I did go through them again before No Time to Die, because I'm like, okay, well, I gotta go through these one more time, and it really was apparent when you watch them in close succession, where it's like, okay, that this is where they should have ended, because after this, it's just your results may vary, but nothing of consequence really happens, and it doesn't really seem meaningful at all. And it also kind of burned a lot of bridges, I think, with a lot of audience members, because that was the last point where everybody, where most people were kind of on board with where they were going, and they seemed to have wrapped up a lot of their plot threads, and they were seeming to be pointing more towards uh, finally getting back into a more traditional type of Bond film adventure. So while I had many issues with the film, I could understand, like, okay, now this is where they've gotten it out of their system. It seems like they've now gotten on some sort of solid footing again, and now they're going to be able to go forward more strongly, only to then take a left turn completely and do something else entirely, and like take all that goodwill and chuck it out the window, which is what happened when Quantum of Solace came out, and all the Casino Royale goodwill went out the window. So I think that's the line in the sand where you can definitely say, from and even if you like the two other films, I don't think they're anywhere near as strong as where that left off. So I think there's an intrinsic feeling, just from a story construction standpoint, that they really should have stopped there, and then they would have had maintained that strong footing, and they would have been able to then move into something new. And then after this point, it's just been like they're just spinning their wheels and throwing stuff at the wall, and some things stick, and they're just they're just kind of going in all kinds of different directions. At least that's how it appears to me. But I definitely agree that end of Skyfall is in the Craig films. That's where they should have stopped. At least the way that I view them and the way that they feel and the way that they play. I think that was the perfect end point. Yeah, it would be amazing to see all of the classic Bond films in IB Tech prints that have been preserved well. Unfortunately, you can't do all of them because IB Tech stopped. So you might be able to get to Man with the Golden Gun for U.S. prints, and then might be able to get Spy and UK prints because UK in the UK they went to Star Wars essentially, but I don't know if they made any. That would just be a guess. The other thing is, I would love to actually see them with their alternative audio presentations because there are some that apparently did have magnetic stereo mixes, which have never surfaced. And that's something I've been researching for years. And the information on that material is practically non existent. So it's not just potential 70 millimeter blowups, but there's potential mag stereo mixes floating around out there that nobody knows anything about. Okay, hooray! Talking about associating Bond with Marvel being a product of their time, and they work better in the original time context. Okay, so yeah, I guess that would be kind of talk about like more how a lot of people always talk about going back and doing a sort of period Bond adaptation, like doing a direct period adaptation of one of the novels. That I think more and more that's getting popular. They keep doing that in the literary bonds when they have people come in and do a Fleming pastiche or write a period bond set in the 50s or 60s. So it's definitely doable, but I would still feel weird about it being the next official film being a period film. But we're in a different realm of media now with streaming series and things, and with Amazon now being in the picture. It's possible, but I don't see Eon really going for that because they're still sticking to their theatrical window. But there is something to be said about sticking to period. But yeah, all you have to do is go and look at the literary Bond novels that have come out in the past 10, 20 years. That do a period setting like William Boyd's Solo or Sebastian Falk's Devil May Care. So the idea is definitely there. Yeah, Tarantino has talked about that sort of idea before, and he said he wanted to do Casino Royale more like the book. Although he probably he wouldn't be the person I would choose for that job. I don't know if that's not really what I would think his sort of milieu is, but and I don't know. I still feel weird about having a period Bond film. I get the idea, but I've always preferred the modern novels that just don't really try to make things realistic in terms of they don't pay attention to the age. They just keep Bond as Bond and just don't worry about the fact that he'd be pushing 70 or 80 in the early 2000s at least. So there's a definitely a bit of suspension of disbelief there, but that's I usually prefer the Bond stories that just sort of get on with it in that sense. Oh wow, Ethan with the super chat. Thank you so much. Wow, that was wonderful. I'll grab Logic. Wait, thank you. Oh goodness, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to do some more live streams. I always mean to, and then time gets away from you and things. So I had some time this evening, so it's been wonderful to hang out with everybody. Again, I'm just happy people were around, and hope you guys have been enjoying hanging out. So again, didn't really have any plans, just hopped on and just happy you guys were here. Are you worried that physical media might stop getting made? That's Everybody likes to talk about it. Everybody likes to make clickbaity articles or videos. But it is a serious topic of discussion. it's not something that's going to go away anytime soon, but it's definitely going to, if people don't support it, it's going to start drying up more and more. It's going to become more of a specialty market as it already is. There will have to be something like the spark to create the vinyl trend, to create that demand for people to want to go and get a physical release of a film. And I think that's going to come more and more from streaming services. And now the big domino is Disney pulling stuff off of Disney Plus for the for essentially the tax write-off thing. And it's essentially the next domino after Warner, pulling Batgirl and doing that with feature films. Well, now Disney's done that with streaming for their own shows, and this is stuff that does not have a physical release. So that's where you're really screwed, because there's no other option, and then that makes people really start to go crazy. But the more this happens and the more people realize that having physical media will still uh, guarantee you having a version of it because you physically have it in your hands, eventually there's going to be more of that sort of physical desire and connection, like what we've seen with the massive increase in vinyl record sales. But again, it's going to take a massive upswing, or it's going to take more of these streaming services pulling things, I think, before we see any sort of I don't think it's unfortunately ever going to be as big as the vinyl trend, but something may happen that will start to trigger it. But it's just going to have to, it's going to be incremental essentially. What if Brosnan came back to the Bond films? Maybe not as Bond, but as a villain. I wouldn't necessarily be adverse to people coming back. The idea has always been, wouldn't it be fun if so and so came back and played M? And then they did apparently try to get Connery to play Kincaid in Skyfall, and it just didn't go anywhere. I just think it would be too distracting. I think that would be the problem, because the whole time you'd be sitting there going, or I should say, you'd just be pointing at the screen. You just couldn't help it. So I think it would be a problem more of, it would just be distracting and be a bit too out of place. But if you figured out how to make it work, and the part was really well written, and it had some nice meaty acting bits, I suppose it could work. But yeah, I just think overall it would be too distracting, even though it's a fun idea. Oh gosh, talking about the Bond films with original logos. Oh man, that it kills me not having the logos. I did get, I'm of course used to seeing some form of MGM on them because I grew up with most of them on video. So I still miss them not having the MGM UA video logo, and then going into the UA swoosh, because they were sort of standardized to that, but at least they had some kind of UA logo. And at least for the late 80s films, that was technically okay. For like Living Daylights, that was accurate. But that's how they're burned into my brain, because I just watched them repeatedly on tape. And that's how they were standardized to that. But it would be amazing to see all the original logos restored. But you have to do research, make sure you get the correct logo, and there's of course rights and legalities involved. But I think logos should be protected and preserved as part of the film experience, particularly if they're tied into the film. Um, or if there's legally no reason why you can't include them, you definitely should. GoldenEye should always open with the mid '90s UA logo. I don't know what you call it, the the sparkly one with the brown letters on the sort of stone looking background with the new theme music. All the 80s ones should have the 80s UA logo, so on and so forth. But they usually don't care or look at things like this. Any other import Blu-rays you're interested in picking up? Yes, lots. Now, especially network titles, unfortunately, there were so many network discs that I wanted to get that I hadn't yet, and now I'm like, they're probably going to start shooting up on eBay, unfortunately. Oh, cool. Audio system. Yeah, I have. Admittedly, it's not the fanciest thing in the world, and I sort of cobbled it together. But what I do is I have an Onkyo TXNR 626. So I'm still just running 7.1. I'd like to upgrade to Atmos someday, but I have to figure out how to rig it up in my space if I'm going to try and put speakers in the ceiling, and up firing speakers aren't the greatest. So currently I'm still rocking 7.1. It plays well with most everything, and I've been very pleasantly surprised how well Atmos still is preserved in 7.1. Obviously, you're never going to get the full complete effect, but if you study sound mixes and you understand how Atmos works, you can still see what they're doing. And I still find it amazing how beautifully well it just automatically works in a 7.1 environment. Um, Basically, what I have for speakers is all, I mean, I guess now it's technically getting into vintage, but I have clip speakers for everything, but all mine are mid to late 90s, early 2000s. So I've got clips bookshelves for my surrounds, and then I've got a pair of Klipsch towers, which are actually rather nice. I got really lucky a number of years ago. I found a guy on Craigslist who just bought and repaired speakers, and he had these from an estate sale that had never been used. So, and it's thankfully before they started making their speakers out of, you know, cheaper materials. Like you can tell the difference between a clip speaker from the early to mid 90s that feels more solid and wood bodied than one today that feels much lighter. So I'm always amazed at what I can get out of these, and have mine set up and equidistant and tuned in and everything. So I you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. You just tweak and upgrade as you can. I started out with just having stereo, then I jumped to 5.1, and then when I got my towers, I finally went to 7.1. The trouble is when you're working with matrix audio, because while the modern decoders are brilliantly technologically advanced, they don't always necessarily play well with keeping that mono surround perfect. A lot of times they want to sort of stereoize or pull the sound around a little bit. So you do have to unfortunately deal with that sometimes. So if because I watch a lot of laser discs and things, and I watch a lot of films with matrixed audio, sometimes you can sort of recognize where the mono field behind you sort of getting pulled around a little bit. And unfortunately, there's no like pure direct 4 channel matrix option. But that only happens occasionally. I've been very happy that for the most part, stuff like ProLogic 2X and Neo 6 still does a great job. And of course, newer receivers have even more advanced codecs for dealing with Atmos and stuff. So that's the next equipment upgrade I'd like to do at some point, is to jump into a new receiver so then I can start listening to Atmos at home. But they've worked out a lot of things, but it's still nowhere near what cinematic Atmos is. But it's also not the easiest thing to figure out how to install in your own home environment and figure out how to do it, and is it gonna justify the cost when admittedly 90% of the time I'm watching a 1930s film with a noisy mono track on an old laser disc, or I'm watching a Blu-ray of a mono film with a noisy audio track. It's like, so I'm going to go full Atmos at some point, but I just haven't done it at this point. But that's basically how my audio setup is. Oh, cool. More logo talk. Excellent. Seeing a CGI logo on an obvious pre-CGI film irks me. Yes. Oh gosh. Oh, they've coined it as the term plastering. That, yeah, that makes sense because they literally are. They're just like plastering it on with a big bunch of glue. The one of the ones that kills me, I got reminded of recently when you watch the Blu-ray of Mean Streets, they screwed up the opening because they put the new Warner logo on it, but it lasts too long. So when the iconic opening Scorsese dialogue of narration over the black screen comes up, that Warner logo is still there. And it stays up, and then Marty starts talking, and I'm like, no. So it should be the 70s red Warner logo, and then it should go right to black, and it should be complete darkness when the voice starts. But nope, they goofed that up, and that's stuff that happens when they plaster new logos on. They frequently screw up original openings because people don't pay attention to these things. Yeah, I've come to really adore directional dialogue. I'm sad that it's viewed by a lot of people as like apparently technologically inferior, and they want to keep everything center locked. So anytime directional dialogue gets preserved, I'm super happy. They actually did preserve. It's mostly still there on the Temple of Doom remixes, and Crusade as well actually has directional dialogue, although it doesn't seem quite as much as what it is on the Laserdisc actually. But I was very happy that at least that got maintained, because those do have some directional dialogue, not all the time, but it is definitely there. But after that point, it just kind of, it only rarely pops up. But I am so happy anytime it's preserved on any release, but especially on modern restorations. Like for me, the biggest thing about Spartacus wasn't the picture, but it was that they finally put the full dialogue banning with. That has got to be the best directional dialogue movie in history because they're constantly cutting back and forth to reaction shots, and the dialogue is following and doing over the shoulders on individual lines. And I'm just like, I love this. I don't know if anyone else notices this, but I love this, and it's fully restored finally. But yeah, I wish directional dialogue would really fully come back. Oh, geez, I have now babbled on for 3 hours. Oh man, I thought I was just gonna jump on for a little bit, and I thought there'd be maybe some people hanging out, and we just talk about some random fun stuff. So this has far exceeded my expectations, which I didn't really have any because yes, this was totally impromptu. So thanks to everybody for hanging out. So um, and it's probably about time for me to call it a night. But if anybody has some last minute questions you want to get in, I'll hang around for a little longer because I try to cover everything I can in one of these. I know it sucks to be on a live stream and feel like you can't get your question in, and I try to cover everything. Unfortunately, this while this is fun, it's still kind of one sided. So I hope I haven't been trying to follow the the text chat too much. Yes. Yes, the 2004 so-called director's cut of THX 1138, Kill Me Now, oh god. Uh, I bought that DVD, when it came out. I was 14. THX is one of the films that changed my life. I saw it late night on TCM. Had to wait years to finally see it, and of course, it was letterboxed, and it totally blew my mind. I still think it's one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. And then I saw that, and I was like, "Oh my god, George, what have you done?" I think it's worse than the Star Wars Special Edition changes in a lot of ways, but most people don't talk about that cut of the film, and that's all that exists, and the dated 2004 effects and the horrible 5.1 sound remix, and just no. So the only proper version is the Laserdisc, and that is the 1978 reissue version. So it really, I keep hoping the Warner Archive does a multiple Blu-ray set with new scans and does the 1978 reissue version, the 1971 theatrical version, aka put the freaks up front, as the Warner Studio called their edit. Um, because the 1971 version, as fans have found, does have footage not in the 1978 version, and some of the editing is different outside of putting it back to how it was. and maybe do some new extras. That is a release that needs to happen because that director's cut is just crap, and it's super dated, and it now looks and sounds even worse. And it seems to be stuck that way because I don't think they did it in a super high resolution or anything. Um, Gosh, there's so much about that. Oh God, I can't stand that. I hate that version so much. I wish people could actually see the film properly and then be able to properly appreciate it as how forward thinking and amazing it was for being 1971. But nope, they only get the hideously altered version. At least with graffiti, it really needs a new scan, and it needs a beautiful new UHD release because that could be really something. All the Technoscope night photography and all the color and things, if done right and properly and archivally, which of course they're not going to do, with the original mono mix that was groundbreaking for the time for being, as Walter Murch would put it, worldized, and having everything be designed to replicate the location and have the source music be in the car radios driving around with the windows down. All you hear are the remixes of the Dolby Stereo reissue mix, or the home video remixes, and George had to change the opening shot because reasons. So at least it hasn't been. Graffiti is the one Lucasfilm title that hasn't been torn apart and changed 50 different ways and slapped back together, but the masters are dated. The shot is an opening CG shot now. The sound was remixed, and of course they changed the closing text after the theatrical run. They tweaked that a little, but outside of that, it's the same film, thankfully. But it definitely needs a new scan and new presentation, and it could be great, but I'm scared of what they could do because they could then make it, like the others, and find more things they want to do. Dream Warner Archive release would be THX or Freaks. Yeah, I know Freaks, I think, is on their radar because I know I'm pretty sure it's been asked about in some of the archive podcasts. So that one is, I think, definitely on their radar. I just think they were trying to find better elements, or maybe Criterion picked it up. I know I say that a lot, but you never know. But I think that that is definitely on their radar. So is the crowd, a number of others. But they always have to do search for better elements if they exist. Only seen the laserdisc version of THX. Yes, just do that. If you watch the 2004 version, it's very painful. If you really want to test yourself, try it. And the sound is really just, I don't bother with it. Just don't. It's oh man, I hate that version so much. People would accept Technoscope being super grainy if they actually could see it properly. I think I love Technoscope films because you get the scope shape, and yes, it's not as high quality is 35 millimeter anamorphic, and some people call it like 16 millimeter, which yeah, I get that the resolution is technically lower because the frame's cut in half, but you're getting to use spherical lenses. And some of my favorite films of all time, like THX and the Ipcris file, were shot in Technoscope, and those are two of the most amazing examples of film cinematography I've ever seen, and part of why I think they're some of the greatest films ever made. And then of course Leone, made Technoscope magic. So, and had he been using anamorphic, he couldn't have developed his style because it would be theoretically impossible with anamorphic lenses. So, that's why he stuck with Technoscope, because scope shaped spherical lenses. Who cares if the lab does bad conversion? At least I can, develop my style and do what I want to do. Yes, the director's cut is Lucas made and supervised. It was done for the 2004 DVD of THX 1138, and then it got ported to the Warner Blu-ray, which is the same, and now it's super dated because it was done in 2004. But yeah, that was while the Star Wars DVDs were getting made, and yeah, he went to town on THX, and there's random CGI all over the place. It's just I would recommend just stay away from that version. The extras are good. So I still have my DVD for the extras, but yeah, that's the film you have to see on Laserdisc, actually, unfortunately. Even though it's not a perfect transfer, that's the only proper official release of the film that actually is the film, to be honest. Yeah, Rio Bravo is getting a UHD. It's Warner Studio label. I think it's just UHD only. I think they skipped a Blu-ray. That means probably HDR10 because it's Warner Studio label. It would have been better as Dolby Vision, but with its being Warner, I'm just like, as long as they leave stuff alone, and the previous Blu-ray had the weird, dodgy color timing that always seemed odd. So I'm happy they're doing it. It's needed a new scan for a long time because I don't think the color on the Blu-ray was really what it should have been. I think it was way too overdone, and so usually whenever you watch it, I've been watching the super old DVD actually, even though it's getting on up there in years, just because I have the Blu-ray too, but I didn't think the color approach was right. So I hope it turns out well. I don't think the original audio is going to be paid all that much attention to, but any upgrade for catalog titles in this day and age is good. So Warner catalog UHDs have turned out decently for the most part on the last couple ones. So it's not going to be perfect because it's the Warner Studio label, but at least hopefully it should be some kind of upgrade. Oh, yes. Yes, the entire Harry Palmer trilogy needs new scans, and Billion Dollar Brain needs the Beatles scene put back in. Yes, even though it's going to cost a crazy amount of money and nobody's ever going to do it, I'm just like, please let me do it. Is anybody really going to care that I put 30 seconds back in where you hear A Hard Day's Night with a bunch of kids holding Beatles records in a United Artists 1967 film that I have to beg people to sit down and watch because it's crazy Ken Russellness and it makes zero sense to most people? Is anybody going to care if I put this 30 seconds of the Beatles back in? Yes, I know you're still going to charge me like $20 million and I can't do it, but doggone it, I still want to. Um, yeah, they all do. I broke down. I did grab the imprint box. I am going to do a big review on this, but I have to do one of my giant deep dive reviews because I have to talk about all the other issues and video releases. And these are all based on pre-existing masters, none of which are super great. And Kino was going to do a new scan of Ipcrest, but that fell apart. So they wound up using the old network master. But yeah, they all three need new work. I hope it happens at some point. If I ran a label, these would be, in my top immediate must lists. And then I would also do new scans of the infamous Harry Allen Towers 90s films because I'm a glutton for punishment and I'm a Michael Caine fanatic and I'm obsessed with the Palmer films. So I have seen those several times, even though they're not good. I would also include them because they should be included, doggone it. Everyone should experience the pain. Uh, okay, admittedly, they're not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, they are very, very clearly made for television 90s films that do not have good scripts and they're a mess. But yeah, I would definitely include those as well. Best disc ever. Oh man. I don't know if I could choose just one. And I'd have to figure out which format you meant. Uh because I'd want to do like, okay, well, this one's, I'd have to do like a best overall, in terms of picture quality, audio quality, extras, packaging. Um, uh, for Blu-ray, most indicator titles could take that. Because they're, even if they're old masters, they're done the best they can be. So that's an easy recommendation. A lot of Warner Archive titles are up there, but they don't get to do a lot of extras, but they're also super inexpensive. Um, there's so many. Gosh, there's so many. I couldn't choose just one. Yeah, Lowry really, I think, popularize that whole add grain back once you degreen it, and then just call it perfectly fine, because that still is a seemingly a prevailing thought with a lot of people, like, oh well, it doesn't matter, you can put grain in, and it's like, well, not exactly. And I know sometimes they apparently will, even nowadays, the ability is there to do some grain reduction and things, and then like actually take portions of the grain, and like then save it separately, and then work on the image, and then try to add portions of the original grain back, because we've gotten more advanced. So unfortunately, the ability is there now to just really get in there and manipulate the image in a lot of different ways. But it seems to have really been Lowry Digital that was the one that really popularized the whole we just take everything out look. And then the worst are when you go and look at their early DVDs that everyone raved over, and you see North by Northwest, and you see Citizen Kane, and probably the worst one is Sunset Boulevard. That one, oh my god, that is so bad. It's so bad that it looks like a smeary mess, and the grayscale is so bad that it has that sort of greenish look of old crappy public domain black and white transfers. Oh my god. I remember it, I bought it and I was watching it on a CRT where you didn't really see as much of that, but gosh, that is just, I dare anybody to try and sit through that whole disc. The original Paramount DVD of Sunset Boulevard, their special collector's edition that got the Lowry treatment, and the indie DVDs got it as well. So they really don't look so hot. Just like the Star Wars DVDs, but not as bad, of course. Oh, Chris got to see a Good, Bad, the Ugly print in 1990. Detail, the grain was heavy but natural. Depth of field was great with circle lenses. Yeah, um, I bet even beat to crap. I've never seen an original GBU print projected. I've only seen the 2003 prints, but I did see an original, the only print MGM had of For a Few Dollars More, which got a little tattered in places, and unfortunately had one shot that had turned pink. But I think it seemed like a total mix. Actually, it was a U.S. release print. It did have the U.S. release edits, but my gosh, it's the best I've ever seen the film, even with one shot being pink. Oh man. And halfway through the soundtrack spiked. So the last half of the film was ultra loud, but oh my gosh, that's the best I've ever seen the film. I wish I could see that print again, actually. No, I've never had anyone officially contact me, Drake, about bad reviews of disc releases. Um, I've never had any sort of official recognition. I'd love to hear back from anybody. It's not like I want to say, I'm not trying to say, hey, you guys suck, but it's like I just care about film preservation, and I like to not have my money being wasted, and I know this stuff is important, even if most people don't talk about it or go into the levels that I seem to. But I would certainly like to hear from people, because I'd give anything to go do QC for them and just live in a closet somewhere in the mastering room. It's like, well, will work for correct transfers, and will work to make sure discs are properly archival, and are properly done. You would think that that would at least help you get your foot in the door, just so people might, actually listen to you for a change. But yeah, I've never heard anything. I never thought my any of my videos were that would ever get that big. Usually feel like I'm just the guy shouting into the wind, no one hearing me or anything. But it would certainly be nice, actually, if I ever heard anything. Yeah, Andy, I've from what I've read about the Trek TOS films on UHD, they're definitely better than the awful DNR fest of the Blu-rays. The Blu-rays for all the Star Trek films were just awful, except for Wrath of Khan finally getting the new scan and Blu-ray reissue. So I'm definitely finally gonna check those out. I was just waiting for the hubbub to die down and see what the different releases would do, and then see if any might drop in price a little bit. So I'm definitely going to check those out. They're not perfect though, because I know they have messed around with some of the effect shots, which is how I figured out that's what they did on the indie films, because it's the same thing. So I'm guessing maybe this is a Paramount thing. But also, again, no original audio really bummed me out. So that's why I didn't get them sooner, but I'm definitely going to do so now. Yeah, it'd be nice. Hopefully, Indicator or somebody gets to do 4K upgrades of the Harryhausen films. Feels like I'm the only one who likes billion-dollar brains sometimes. Nope, you're not the only one. I love it. It's strange and bizarre, and Ken Russell directing a spy film is probably not the best idea for a film narrative, but it is a one of a kind experience, and I have shown it to many people, and a lot of them didn't necessarily get it, but it is definitely an experience, and that score is one for the ages. The Richard Rodney Bennett score is hypnotic, just like the film. So I think all three films are great in their own ways. Is Star Wars 4K 77 worth getting? Yeah, if you get into the fan effort side of things, in terms of Star Wars, that's what you have to do. Yeah, that's just how it is, and how we've gotten to the point of the fan efforts getting this impressive and amazing. I am just blown away, because I still fondly remember the the original trilogy days of all of us messing around with the 2006 gout DVDs, and trying to make VHS captures and figure out how to capture laserdisc audio and cobble together stuff. So um, it's ridiculous that this is the point we've gotten to, where fans have done more research alone than anyone in an official capacity. But yeah, for Star Wars, it's just what you have to do. Once bent it to someone about how the Men in Black core stream had the chroma grain removed, and they said, "Look, you can just add it back in." Yeah, that seems to be the idea, that you can just take things apart, and oh yeah, you can just put that back in there. It's like, well, no, once you've taken it out, it's not the same anymore. Yes, that Kane DVD, gosh, it looks worse and worse the more time that goes by. Yeah, it's, oh gosh, it's so bad, and it alters the visual style. It adds a sort of flatness, and the grayscale is shot. Yeah, that and Sunset Boulevard. Those are two of the worst DVDs ever made. And the audio on that Kane DVD, that presentation of the mono is horrible. Oh, thanks, 200 watt. Oh man, gosh, I can't believe people give me super chats. That's so nice of you. Thank you. Okay, let me see if I can catch up real quick. Um, Yeah, the 70 millimeter mix is still an approximation on the fan recreations. It's still the Harry Hen mix recreation, which is absolutely brilliant. I mean, he did more research and more nuts and bolts hard work trying to decipher the audio mix history of Star Wars and figure out if the claims were true about the definitive Laserdisc mix being based on the 70 millimeter mix, which seems to apparently been true. So that's why he used that as the source for his 70 millimeter recreation, and then had to go through and reconform it to what we know about the 70 millimeter mix, and then bring it into 5.1. And he went through multiple revisions. So what you hear now is the revision of the revision. It's been through many revisions. So always trying to perfect it as best as possible. But this is the type of work that official people in official capacities should be doing and just don't. So it's up to all of us to try and figure this stuff out. Yeah, I need to track down that Japanese LD because it has the PCM version of the Dolby Stereo. I'm still amazed somebody found that. Um, I need to grab a copy of that, and then also, I didn't know for the longest time, but there's a similar thing with Raiders where there is a Japanese pressing that does have a PCM digital track of the Dolby Stereo that we have here as just analog. So that's what I have on my VHS tape copy. I don't know if it's going to be, any different really or much better, but I'd still like to grab a copy of that just to, or of both, just to have them as a PCM. Oh gosh, which film is in the National Film Registry you want to see added? Oh gosh. Oh, once again, that's another question where I'm like, there's so many I can't even begin to. Because every year I look at the whole list again and I'm like, hey, wait, where's so and so? Where's so and so? And trying to remember all of them off the top of your head. But gosh, there's so many. I'd have to look at the list again and remind myself of what isn't there already. I don't know for sure about working on Empire. The problem has always been that they're of course always having to work from faded elements because Empire is the one in between dye transfer and LPP and safety stock. So that's why of the Star Wars trilogy, when you're looking at original prints, Empire is the hardest one to find not faded because they're all faded, unfortunately, which is heartbreaking. So you have to, try and at least in the digital realm, you can combat that a lot more, but you have to be really painstaking about it. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of behind. I need to catch up on all the bits of info and things. Jaws on 4K is uh, it's hard because Spielberg films keep getting tweaked in little bits and ways. Jaws not so much, but they did do a few things like remove some ships on the horizon digitally, and any kind of stuff like that really does bug me, but at least it was minor. They did do more stuff and mess with the color timing more on Close Encounters, which I was not a fan of. And it does have some form of the mono track, so at least there's that, which was, but it doesn't sound as good as the signature LD mono and the signature LD, and the older pre Blu-ray transfers don't have any tweaks in them, so it's kind of like when I want to watch Raiders, I usually just still watch the Laserdisc because there's no tweaks and the audio sounds the best. But at least with Jaws, it's only minor tweaks and it is better than the Blu-ray release. So, and it does have some form of the mono that people can listen to. So, it's solid. I just wish it was 100% archival and had the best sounding mono track. I hate to find issues in everything, but that's just what I do. It's how my head works. Yes, the original Star Wars trilogy should be in the registry. Well, I mean, they are in the registry, but the Library of Congress has a mixture of elements. They have some original elements and they have some special edition elements, but I've not actually gone in there and looked at it myself. But people have done some digging, but they seem to have a mix of different things. Yes, talking about the mix of Temple of Doom, that's one of the great audio mixes. It is beautifully aggressive. Um, all the home presentations do sound good, but there's just something about that matrix track on the letterbox laserdisc. The DVD 5.1 is good and discreet, and the Blu-ray 5.1 doesn't seem to really change anything, and it still sounds pretty good. And now this latest Atmos remix doesn't seem to really change a whole lot, but it is spreading out the sound a little bit more. But there's something about that Matrix track on that Laserdisc. That's the one that makes me smile the most. That's the one that's the most in your face and has a warmth to it, and is one of the most ridiculously aggressive Matrix audio tracks I've ever heard. It's like, I'd say it's probably it's up there in the top list. Probably my number one is the original mix of Flash Gordon, but Temple of Doom is like number two for Matrix audio tracks being ridiculously aggressive. So that one, and then Raiders on this mix is up there as well. Crusade is in that list too, but I don't know what it is, but there's just something about it. Maybe they didn't tweak the levels or EQ it or something, but that is the one that I always come back to for some reason. Yeah, I would like to get some of the other MGMUA classic animation LDs. Now that I've amazingly finished the Looney Tunes boxes, which I still can't believe. Oh my gosh. Um, yeah, I've always kept an eye out for them. So if I ever can find some at decently affordable prices, shall I say, I'll definitely look into those. But at least we now have some nice archive discs for at least some of the Tex Avery volumes, so that should hopefully help start to lower some of the prices. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna start doing some more live chats. I've gone longer than I intended, which is pretty much the story of all of my live streams. So I'm definitely winding down because I don't know if you can tell my throat's starting to get very dry. I brought water like I always do, and then I forget to drink any. That's my problem. Yeah, it's hard to talk about fan preservations because I've sort of dabbled in it, and I'm able to do research and talk with people and find out stuff. I've just never had a crazy amount of equipment or a high end editing PC to really get into some of the amazing stuff they do. But so I kind of am more on the archival and research side of things, but I've been doing all kinds of audio captures of VHS tapes and laser discs to do comparisons and things. So it's now become like a whole realm of film preservation, really, that you just kind of do on your own, and you can't really talk about it all that much because most people aren't going to understand you or know what you're going on about. But then also you're not doing any of this for monetary gain, and you're not trying to take anything away from official releases. But if they're not going to do the archival work themselves, then who is? And I've learned more from I have learned more from the fan community than I ever did in film school, but that's not saying much. I mean, that's I look at the fan community as more of my actual film school than film school is. You can learn more on one page of one forum thread than you can, and I think an entire film school career. But that's just my own personal experience. Um, that's why I kind of like to say that I think of anyone that George Lucas has taught me more than anyone, not necessarily because of things he actually directed or films that he made, but because of some of his own personal opinions that I don't necessarily agree with, and trying to research why that he felt that way and what that entails, and how to preserve films and how to research their history. So if I look at it that way, it's kind of at least a little amusing in that sense, I guess. Yeah, there is the CAVs of Temple and Raiders. I'd like to get them at some point just because they're CAV and I'm a CAV geek. But yeah, they just have. I thought they just had analog audio, but they're saying there's a 1989 pressing of the Pan and Scan that does have digital audio. Okay. Oh boy, that sounds like another random, rare, weird Laserdisc variant for me to track down. It's funny. I track down or look for random record cuttings and different masterings and things. So I'm used to going into record stores looking at dead wax codes. So it's nothing new for me to go into a store and look at laser discs in a little bin on the floor and be looking at mint marks. And people look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, DATC Austria, no rot, yes. And I forgot I said this out loud. I look up and everyone's staring at me, and I'm like, "It's Austrian. It has no rot. This is great." You're not gonna charge me more because I said that now, right? Okay, good. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna purchase this, and I'm gonna go, and we're gonna forget this embarrassing incident happened. Thank you. I have not gotten the, Dragon Slayer UHD yet, because it's Paramount, because it's an effects film, and because it's Vistasonic, or was originally. I really need to, because 'cause I'm sure they may have played with some of the effects a little bit, which it seems like they did from some of the reviews I've read, and I know the color timing is dramatically different, so I really wanna take a look at it myself. Oh, thanks, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, the Tom and Jerry LDs are definitely hanging on to their value. I hope that something finally changes and we do see actual, archive style releases of those. That needs to happen, but um, you know, fingers crossed. Yeah, you would think with UHD having all that disk space that, there's no reason there is no reason they can't include the original audio. They have it. They've remixed it. Um, and I will never for the life of me understand why, if you're going to restore a film or present a film, why it's not considered important to present its original audio track because, as people say, sound is half the experience. And if you've changed that, it's just like if you change the picture and you decided to color it completely, yellow. Of course, they do stuff like that, and some people think that's fine. But if you're going to restore a film and you're going to get the picture as perfect as humanly possible, and it looks beautiful, and then you're not going to include the original audio, I don't see what the point is. And then on top of that, if you do include the original audio, if you don't make sure that it's actually a proper sounding version, because most people don't pay attention to that, I also don't see what the point is. So it just takes a little extra time and research and people actually knowing what they're doing and caring to know what they're doing, which some people thankfully do, but unfortunately not everyone feels the same way. And that's why when I sit down to just make a Blu-ray review, it gets longer and longer and longer. And I'm like, why do I do this to myself? um, but anyway, with that, it's probably, oh gosh, it's getting late on my end, so it's probably about time for me to wrap this up. I think that's a pretty decent runtime. I think my throat is telling me I'm good. So I hope it's been fun for everybody hanging out. This has been wonderful. I'm definitely going to be trying to get back to doing some more regular live streams. Try to get them to a good solid conversational length like this. I think 2 to at least an hour and a half to 2 or 3 hours is a good length. So that way I don't completely exhaust myself like I've done before on some of these. So I hope this has been fun for everybody. It's been great to hang out and just chat about physical media releases. And I hope everybody gets to go and see uh, both Michael Keaton and Harrison Ford return later this month. And hopefully it is at least worth the price of admission somewhat, but we'll see. And I'm already, of course, been spinning up my laserdisc copies as I usually do, and so got a number of videos to do on both the Batman films and the Indy series to have out, hopefully, for this month, and then a bunch of other things in the works, and hopefully some more commentaries and live streams among other things, and getting back to more book reviews. I, I it seems I always come up with like 50 ideas, and when I sit down and I just think, okay, I need to do these, I need to do these 10 videos, and then before I know it, I've filled up like 3 post-it notes front and back with like I should do this and this should be a series. So unfortunately, uh, real everyday life and time constraints decide that your plans are not going to go the way you thought they would. But I'm definitely going to try to get back to doing more live streaming. So thanks so much everybody for hanging out, and thanks so much for making this another fun chat. And I will be doing these again, of course, if I ever hit another threshold. This has been amazing, and I'm so thankful that everybody here liked my videos enough to click the subscribe button. I made it a definite. I made a definite choice when I started making videos that I was never going to ask anyone to like or subscribe or follow me in any way. That if anybody liked what I did enough, that actually having them, subscribe of their own accord was meant even more. So because I know you're technically supposed to do that and encouraged to do that on YouTube to encourage people to subscribe to you, but I myself prefer to just do that on my own and not be just sort of hit over the head a million times to click all the buttons. So the fact that I've now gotten to 3,000 astonishes me. So I am so very thankful to all of you here and anyone who watches the videos I make and gets something out of them. I thought I just finally had an outlet for all of my film babblings and film thoughts and bits of analysis and all the disc factoids I have in my head. So just getting this incredible positive feedback is just I something I never expected. So just want to say thank you so much again to everyone who just follows the stuff I do and comments and likes and subscribes and everything. It really means a lot and it encourages me to keep going. So hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the night and rest of the week. Definitely spin up some wonderful discs, LaserDisc if you have LaserDisc, and definitely keep looking at transfers more closely and trying to decipher more of the magic of the medium of the cinema in any way that you can. So as always, thank you ever so much for watching, and hope to see you again soon sometime. Bye, everybody.